What if the most fashionable people of the medieval era were actually the most terrifying? Cloaked in layers of silk, adorned with feathers that whispered secrets, their extravagant attire often concealed more than mere skin. Can your mind fathom a world where style dictated survival, and a flamboyant hat could seal your doom? Gaze into the fabric of time, each thread a tale of madness. Medieval fashion wasn't just attire, it was an eccentric tapestry woven with despair, ambition, and ruthless competition. Noble women draped in gowns so heavy they could sink ships, men sporting codpieces so ridiculous they might as well have been medieval battle armor. Dreadful yet mesmerizing. Death and beauty danced hand in hand, while the streets swarmed with the grotesque and the sublime. Consider the infamous poulaines, those exaggeratedly pointed shoes. A weaponized fashion statement. Slip on a pair and you could trip your enemies or stab their hearts with a mere misstep. The fabric of society was woven with envy and treachery, where a single miscalculation could unravel your entire legacy. Imagine being summoned to court, your life dangling not on merits or valor but on the absurdity of your silhouette. Cloaks billowed like storm clouds, adorned with fur that could make a peasant weep in envy. But within those luxurious folds lurked the scent of decay, fast fashion of the medieval world, where the dying art of tailorship met the ravenous hunger for status. Remember, the only thing more dangerous than the plague was a rival's jealousy. One wrong stitch, and your fate was sealed. The irony? Nobility died in the pursuit of beauty, and all that remained was their grotesque legacy. Can you grasp the scandal of the Fardingale? A cage-like contraption, it expanded waistlines to unimaginable proportions. Women navigated the world like human peacocks, their movement both captivating and tragic. Every rustle of fabric whispered tales of betrayal, ambition, and the silent screams of lower classes choking on the dust of their extravagant footfalls. What price did they pay? The answer lies in the shadows. They sacrificed comfort for status, sanity for style. Even the color choices were fraught with danger, dyes derived from toxic substances, creating a vivid palette not just of beauty but of peril. A rich hue could turn you into a target. Those who flaunted the vibrant reds and purples were as likely to be poisoned by their own finery as they were to be celebrated in the court. Life hung by a thread, while ambition swung like a pendulum, ready to cut down the unsuspecting. Fashion was no mere frivolity, it was a weapon, a badge of power, and a mirror reflecting the darkness of the human soul. Medieval attire bore witness to intrigues of court, betrayals veiled in silks, and the insatiable hunger for prestige. What were they thinking? What madness drove them? This is not just history, it's a riddle wrapped in a conundrum, drenched in absurdity. Buckle up, the tapestry of medieval fashion is more a noose than a gown, a choking reminder that in the game of style, one misstep could lead to a fatal fall. Chapter 1. The origins of medieval fashion, a historical overview. The clang of metal on metal echoes through the dimly lit hall, a sound that reverberates like thunder, shaking the very foundations of the castle. I stand, breathless, as Lady Isolde's fingers tremble above the fabric laid before her, the rich, crimson silk that calls to her like a siren. She knows, even as she hovers over it, that this choice could spell her doom or her salvation. The world outside is a cacophony of suffering, of war and whispers, yet here, in this moment, the fate of her heart hangs on the thread of a garment. Isolde, a woman caught between the burning ambition of her father, the Duke, and the unquenchable fire of her own desires. She longs for a life unbound by the rigid tapestries of nobility, where her spirit could soar like the larks at dawn, yet the weight of expectation presses against her shoulders like an iron corset. The fabric begs for her touch, to be molded and shaped into something magnificent, while her heart races with the knowledge that the world outside this sanctuary is unforgiving and cruel. She remembers the day her brother was taken, the way her mother's laughter faded like mist, and she swallows hard, the silks now a veil between her dreams and the abyss. In the corner, the flickering flames cast shadows that dance like ghosts, whispering secrets of the past. Here stands Thomas, a humble tailor with calloused hands that have stitched together not just fabric, but the stories of the realm. He watches Isolde, his heart caught in a vice of longing. He is a man of the people, yet, in the presence of nobility, he feels the chains of his station tighten. He remembers the night spent toiling under a single flickering candle, the laughter of children outside his window, their dreams untouched by the burden of crowns. As he threads the needle, each stitch is a silent prayer, a hope that one day he might fashion a life for himself, woven from the same dreams that so easily slip through his fingers. Then there's Lady Vivienne, Isolde's closest confidant, her heart as wild as the untamed woods that cradle their castle. She yanks on her own garments, her fingers tugging at the sleeves, feeling the weight of her own insecurities. Vivienne harbors a secret, a forbidden love that blooms beneath the moonlight, a tale too dangerous to breathe aloud. She remembers the stolen glances across the banquet hall, the way her heart raced as if it were a wild stallion breaking free from its reins. How could she ever choose between loyalty to her friend and the promise of a love that could ignite the very stars? As the conflict escalates, the tension thickens like the air before a summer storm. Isolde, fueled by her desire for freedom, finds herself pressed against the cold stone walls, the crimson silk whispering promises of rebellion. She seeks to wear her heart on her sleeve, literally. "Dress me," she orders Thomas, her voice a blend of authority and desperation. "Make me a gown that speaks of strength, that shouts defiance against the silent screams of my life." In that moment, her plea is a battle cry, echoing through the corridors of time. Thomas falters, the weight of her words wrapping around his heart like a noose. Can he dare to create a garment that embodies a revolution? "But, my lady," he stammers, "the world is not ready for this." The flicker of doubt dances in his eyes, but he craves her fire. "What if my father," she interrupts, her voice a blade, sharp enough to cut through the fear that binds them all. "What if I am more than just a pawn in his game? I am not just fabric to be stitched to his will." Vivienne steps in, a breath of urgency in her voice. "Isolde, think. You know how dangerous this is. The king's decree binds us tighter than these laces." Yet even as she speaks, her heart beats in rhythm with Isolde's rebellion, the pulse of their friendship intertwined with the threads of fate. The shadows grow darker, the castle seems to sigh, a living entity haunted by the unfulfilled dreams of its inhabitants. Outside, the distant cries of the battle-worn cling to the air, a reminder of the peril that shadows their every move. And yet, within these walls of stone, a revolution is brewing, ignited by the very act of creation. Cloth and thread become the language of their souls, a tapestry woven with courage and defiance. Thomas's fingers fly, the needle sparking like a flint, igniting the very essence of hope in the room. Each stitch carries a weight, of dreams unspoken, of futures uncertain, an echo of a world that could be. And as the gown takes shape, the air crackles with electricity, the clock ticking in the background, time a relentless beast, a spectre poised to snatch at their ambitions. Isolde's world is about to collide with the reality outside, and the question looms, heavy as thunderclouds: will they rise together or will they be crushed beneath the weight of their own desires? I remember standing there, caught in that moment, the fabric a metaphor for our lives, intertwined, colorful, chaotic. The stakes have never been higher, and yet the promise of something more, of freedom, of identity, of love, hangs in the balance, so close yet impossibly far. In this castle, amidst the clamor of fate and fabric, the very essence of medieval fashion is born, not merely from the thread, but from the raw emotion of its creators, woven together by the invisible hands of destiny. The confrontation they dread looms just beyond the horizon, and with each heartbeat, the tension thickens, preparing to unleash a maelstrom of consequences that will echo through the ages. Will Isolde embrace her fate, clad in her own design? Will Thomas dare to step beyond the threshold of class? And will Vivienne choose the love that both liberates and chains her? The answers hang suspended like the threads of a loom, waiting for the first cut to begin a new weaving altogether, a transformation that will forever change the fabric of their lives. The clock struck midnight, and the neon lights flickered ominously over the city streets, pulsating like a heartbeat fading into the night. I stood there, breathless, as the chill of the air wrapped around me like a shroud. The sounds of laughter, muffled by distance, echoed through the alley, an eerie reminder of a world that felt just out of reach, a world brimming with color and life that I could only glimpse from the shadows. My fingers grazed the fabric of my worn-out jeans, the frayed edges whispering stories of nights spent dreaming of something more. I was invisible, a ghost caught between two realms, tethered to nothing but the tattered dreams of my existence. Across the street, Lydia danced in effortless grace, the sequin dress she wore shimmering under the streetlights, a beacon of privilege that sliced through the darkness like a knife. I could feel the weight of envy rise in my throat, a bitter taste that threatened to choke me. She twirled, her laughter spilling like champagne, intoxicating and painful all at once. I remember how I used to think that clothes were merely fabric, but that night, they transformed into armor, a shield that separated the haves from the have-nots, the beautiful from the broken. From my corner, I watched Javier, the artist, the dreamer. He wore a paint-stained sweater that hung loosely on his frame, a canvas of a different sort. His clothes were a testament to his rebellion, a defiance against the expectations that pressed down like a weight on his chest. He carried the scars of a turbulent upbringing on his sleeves, yet his eyes sparkled with a wild hope. He believed that art could transcend the boundaries of social class, that the brush could bridge the chasms between us, but even I could see the doubt etched into the lines of his face. I remembered the first time I saw him paint. I stood entranced as he splashed colors onto the canvas, the hue swirling with passion and pain. It was a glimpse into his soul, raw and unfiltered, and yet, I could see how the world outside demanded conformity, how the pressure to wear the right label compressed him tighter and tighter. I wanted to scream at the injustice of it all, the way society dictated worth by the threads we wore, as if our very identity could be stitched into fabric. Then there was Lydia, a masterpiece of contradictions, an emblem of elegance, yet a prisoner of her own privilege. The dress she wore was not just a garment, it was a declaration of her social standing, a shimmering wall that kept her safe from the harshness of the world outside. But beneath the surface, I saw her struggle, her need for acceptance, for approval, for love. She smiled as if the world was her oyster, but I knew the truth. I knew the whispers that crept through the halls of her family's estate, expectations that suffocated like a tightening noose. Her screams were silent, swallowed by the glamour that surrounded her, trapped in a golden cage she couldn't break free from. As the night wore on, the rhythm of the city pulsed around us, a heartbeat of desperation and longing. I found myself drifting closer, feeling the magnetic pull of their lives. I watched as Lydia approached Javier, her laughter ringing out, bright and false, like the sound of shattering glass. She had a way of lighting up the room, yet I could see the way her smile faltered, the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes as she confronted the reality of who she was chatting with, a lowly artist in a paint-splattered sweater, a far cry from the polished shoes and tailored suits of her usual crowd. "Why do you always look like you just rolled out of bed?" she teased, though her words cut deeper than she intended. I watched as his expression morphed, the fleeting flicker of hurt crossing his features before he masked it with a smirk. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he tried to shrug off the comment, but the weight of her words hung heavy, a shadow in the vibrant glow of the night. "I could say the same for you, Lydia. Drowning in diamonds doesn't mean you don't feel." His voice was steady, but the undercurrent of vulnerability trembled beneath the surface, and I felt it resonate within me. The truth was laid bare, raw and unfiltered, and it ignited a fire in my chest, a sense of solidarity with his plight. I wanted to scream, to tell them that clothing was not just a reflection of style or status but a mirror that showed the cracks in our souls. I wanted to remind them that beneath the glittering exterior, we were all just fragile beings, battling our own demons in a world that sought to divide us. But I remained silent, a mere observer as the confrontation unfolded. The night progressed, a slow unraveling of tension and heartache, each moment an invitation to a deeper understanding of the invisible chains binding us to our social classes. Lydia's laughter faded to a whisper, and Javier's defiance transformed into vulnerability. They stood there, two souls colliding in the space between dreams and reality, caught in a web of expectations that threatened to pull them apart. I remember the moment the air shifted, the electric tension thickening until it felt almost tangible. As the city loomed around us, shadows danced and flickered, whispering secrets of lives intertwined yet so fundamentally separate. In that moment, I was reminded of the power of clothing, how it could elevate or diminish, empower or suffocate. Each garment a thread, weaving stories of longing, desire, and heartbreak. The night was alive with the echoes of their struggles, a haunting reminder of the societal fabric that shaped our identities. I felt it deep within, the aching truth that we were all trapped in this game, navigating a world designed to keep us apart, to pit us against one another in a cruel contest of worth. The laughter continued, but it rang hollow, stripped of its joy as I stood frozen, caught in the electric tension of their confrontation. And as I watched, the clock ticked on, marking the passage of time, a countdown to an inevitable climax. I felt the weight of our collective experiences hang in the air like a storm cloud, poised to break. In that moment, I knew the story was far from over. The threads of our lives, woven together by circumstance, would continue to twist and turn, creating a tangled tapestry of hope and despair, longing and resolve. Each heartbeat echoed through the silence, a reminder that the influence of social class on clothing choices was not merely a superficial concern, it was the very essence of who we were, and it would linger long after the lights dimmed and the laughter faded. The church bells rang with a despairing clang, shattering the heavy silence of the midday air. I stood frozen, gripped by the sight of her, the girl in crimson, a rushing river of vibrant cloth flowing around her. It was a dress painted with the blood of martyrs, an echo of sacrifice and a shout against the mundane. I could feel the pulse of the crowd, a symphony of gasps and whispers, but all I could think was how that very fabric had woven its way through centuries of faith and conflict, beauty and suffering. The church loomed behind her, its stones bearing witness to untold stories, and within those walls, the boundaries of belief and desire tangled like roots in the earth. I remember the first time I saw her, the girl with the crimson dress, spinning in the churchyard, laughter spilling like wine on a sun-soaked afternoon. Her name was Miriam, a name steeped in history, yet as fresh as the morning dew. She wore her faith like a second skin, and yet, that very faith was what threatened to unravel her. Each swirl of her dress spoke of fervor and repression, of piety and rebellion, and I watched, a spectator caught in the grip of fate. The whispers of the congregation were sharp, knives against her free spirit, and while they prayed for purity, I felt her heart beat fiercely for something more, something that eluded the confines of their doctrine. And then there was David, always lurking in the shadows, a calculating presence with the weight of judgment in his eyes. He was a scholar, and I, an artist in a world of strict lines and rigid beliefs. We had an unspoken rivalry, both enamored with Miriam, yet chained to our own interpretations of faith and fashion. David believed fervently in the church's doctrines, his clothing meticulously tailored, every fold a mirror to the ecclesiastical order. But in the dim light of the evening, I saw him forsake that rigidity, swapping the polished shoes for scuffed boots as he followed Miriam into the depths of the night, where their laughter mingled with secrets and sin. I remember the moment their hands brushed, an electric shock that sent tremors through my very soul. In that fleeting connection lay the spark of a revolution, a rebellion against the suffocating layers of expectation. The fabric of her dress whispered of freedom, of a world beyond the crucifix, while his fingers trembled with the weight of tradition. The tension hung thick in the air, a fog of unfulfilled desires and broken dreams, and I was caught in a tempest, my heart thrumming like the wings of caged birds. The city around us pulsed with life, but for us, it was a mausoleum. Every corner held echoes of the past, each cobblestone a testament to the battles fought in the name of faith. I remember walking through the marketplace, the scent of incense mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread, and I could see the patterns of devotion woven into the garments of the vendors, the rich fabrics of the wealthy, the tattered rags of the poor. Fashion, I mused, was a language of its own, speaking volumes of one's beliefs, desires, and dreams. And yet, it was also a prison, a way to silence the raw truth of who we were. I watched as Miriam transformed her attire, each day a new expression of her internal struggle. The long skirts became shorter, the vibrant hues bolder, challenging the very tenets that sought to define her. With each stitch, she tore at the fabric of societal norms, unraveling the constraints that had bound her. And yet, beneath the surface, I could sense her fear, a chilling whisper of the consequences that awaited anyone daring to defy the sacred. David, too, felt the weight of expectation. He traded his polished shoes for those scuffed boots, a symbol of his silent rebellion, yet one foot still clung to the safety of tradition. "You can't just change everything, Miriam," he pleaded one night, shadows dancing across his face. "Style is a reflection of faith. It's meant to guide us." But she stood firm, defiant, the crimson dress swirling like flames around her, igniting a fire in his heart that threatened to consume him. I remember the night it all came crashing down, an evening thick with tension, the air electric with possibility. The church held a fashion show, a celebration of faith in fabric, yet beneath the surface, an undercurrent of dissent swirled. Miriam took the stage, the embodiment of rebellion, a vision in crimson, a haunting spectre of hope. The crowd gasped, their breaths a chorus of disbelief. She was everything they feared, the embodiment of freedom, unshackled from dogma. But in the distance, I saw David, his expression torn between admiration and horror. He was a man caught in the crossfire of his own beliefs, and I could feel the weight of his conflict press heavily upon us. The applause thundered, yet I sensed the hushed murmurs of condemnation rising like a tide. Religion, that ancient spectre, had woven itself into the very fabric of our lives, dictating not just our faith but our very identities. As Miriam twirled, a goddess adorned in rebellion, I felt the air shift. A storm brewed, dark clouds gathering above. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a collision of faith and freedom. The crowd, once spellbound, began to stir, unease rippling through the audience like a whispered prayer gone awry. I could hear the echoes of the past, the ghosts of those who had defied tradition, their fates hanging in the balance like a pendulum swinging dangerously close to the edge. In that moment, everything hung in the equilibrium of possibility. I remember the weight of every eye upon us, the church's reverberating silence, the heat of Miriam's defiance igniting a spark in my chest. I was caught in the eye of the storm, a witness to a moment that would change everything. The air crackled with tension, and I knew we were on the brink of something monumental, a confrontation between faith and desire that would reshape the very essence of who we were. And as the final notes of Miriam's defiant dance echoed off the church walls, I felt it, the pull of destiny, the weight of history pressing down on us, weaving our fates together in ways we could not yet understand. The city outside held its breath, the shadows closing in, and I realized that we were not just participants in this unfolding drama, we were its authors, our choices forever altering the fabric of our world. So I stood there, amid the swirl of emotions and fabric, the world around me shifting like the sands of time. I was witnessing the birth of a new era, where religion would shape fashion just as surely as fashion would challenge the boundaries of belief. The confrontation was not just between Miriam and David, but within each of us, a struggle to reconcile the sacred with the profane, the past with the future, and the haunting whisper of our own desires with the unyielding weight of tradition. In that moment, we were all bound together, caught in the tapestry of life, each thread a story waiting to be told. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the echoes of muffled whispers, each heartbeat a reminder of the chaos lurking just beneath the surface. I stand in the cathedral's shadow, the high stone walls towering above me like sentinels of forgotten grief. A woman is crying. Her wimple, a delicate cascade of white linen, clings to her like a shroud, its weight heavy with sorrow and unspoken fears. She's lost in her own world, yet her pain seeps into mine, an uninvited guest at this dark banquet of despair. "Why did you let him wear that?" she wails, her voice a sharp knife slicing through the gloom. It's a question that hangs in the air, thick as fog, begging for an answer that none of us can provide. Across the cobblestone square, a man stands alone, his silhouette stark against the dying light. The elaborate horned hat perched atop his head is a grotesque parody of nobility, a crown of mockery that reflects his own internal struggle. I can see the tension in his clenched jaw, the way he shifts his weight as if the very fabric of his existence is a burden too great to bear. He is Roderick, a jester-turned-reluctant leader, charged with the task of uniting a fractured community while grappling with his own demons. "I wanted to make them laugh," he mumbles, almost to himself, as if the sound of his own voice could drown out the cacophony of doubt swirling in his mind. But laughter has become a weapon, not a balm. I remember how laughter used to feel, like a warm embrace on a cold night. But here, laughter is a distant memory, a ghost haunting these streets. Each chuckle from the crowd feels like another dagger, each snicker a reminder of their shared despair. Roderick's heart is heavy with the weight of this burden, and I find myself aching for him, yearning for the carefree spirit he once embodied. Then, just as the last rays of sunlight dip below the horizon, I remember Clara. She stands beside Roderick, her own elaborate headdress, a twisted masterpiece of feathers and gemstones, an armor against the world's cruelty. Yet her eyes betray her, glimmering with tears unshed. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile hope that clings to the air like smoke. Forgiveness, such a fleeting concept. It dances on the edge of their despair, taunting them. I see the way it curls around Clara's heart, a serpent that refuses to let go. The weight of the past pulls at her, the wounds of betrayal festering beneath her regal facade. "We tried, didn't we?" she says, her words a desperate plea, a fragile lifeline cast into the turbulent sea of judgment. But her gaze drifts to the crowd, and I see it, the flicker of doubt. The doubt that festers like an untreated wound, gnawing at her insides until all that remains is a hollow shell of who she once was. "They'll never understand," she mutters, and I can almost feel the chill of that truth wrap around us, a suffocating fog that blots out every glimmer of hope. Roderick, poised between laughter and despair, reaches out for her. It's a tentative gesture, a flicker of light in this dark, oppressive night. "Clara," he breathes, the weight of her anguish pressing against him like a physical force. "We have to try." Try. The word hangs in the air, heavy with unfulfilled promises. It's a fragile thread that connects their hearts, a rope fraying at the edges, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. And yet, they cling to it, desperately grasping at the shards of their shattered dreams. The crowd murmurs, a restless sea of uncertainty and tension. They are waiting, watching, eyes filled with the fear of betrayal and the longing for redemption. In their gaze, I see the weight of history, the stories passed down through generations, tales of betrayal and loss, woven into the very fabric of their beings. "Why?" a voice calls from the back, sharp and accusing. "Why should we trust you?" The challenge hangs in the air like a guillotine poised to fall, and I feel Roderick's heart stutter in response. "Because we are all we have left," he says, his voice a trembling flame flickering against the wind. "Because despair only breeds more despair. And we deserve better." I see the tension ripple through the crowd, a wave of uncertainty. Clara steps forward, her eyes wide and pleading. "We are not our mistakes, but the choices we make going forward. Let us choose hope." Hope, an audacious gamble. It hovers above them, a fragile bird that might take flight or fall prey to the darkness. I remember my own moments of doubt, the times I wanted to scream against the void, the times I felt utterly alone. And yet, here they stand, fighting for that elusive glimmer of light. Suddenly, the skies open, and rain begins to fall, each drop a reminder of the cleansing power of sorrow. The crowd shifts, a sea of umbrellas blooming like flowers under the storm. Roderick and Clara stand tall, resolute against the downpour, and in that moment, I see something shift. Perhaps it's a flicker of connection, a spark of understanding igniting amidst the chaos. But shadows loom, whispers rise, and I know this is but a moment, a pause in the relentless march of time. The storm outside matches the tempest within, and as I watch, I can't shake the feeling that this is merely the beginning. In the heart of the tempest, the elaborate headgear they wear, wimples, horned hats, becomes a symbol of their struggle, a tapestry of their pain, joy, and the absurdity of existence. They are more than mere decorations, they are the burdens they carry, the masks they wear, the stories they tell. As the night deepens, and the rain continues to fall, I feel the pull of their despair, their hope, their fight. The air crackles with tension, and I realize this moment, this fragile thread of connection, is not just theirs. It belongs to us all. And it is here, in this cacophony of emotions, where everything converges, where laughter meets sorrow, where doubt meets faith, where the past collides with the future, that life unfolds, a relentless spiral toward an uncertain fate. She stands there, a silhouette in the flickering candlelight, the sharp tips of her shoes curling like talons, each angle a whisper of elegance and agony. The room is thick with tension, heavy as a shroud, and all I can hear is the rhythmic ticking of the clock, each second a reminder of her suffering. The pointed shoes grip her feet like a vice, a cruel adornment that defines her existence. They are beautiful, undeniably, and yet they pierce the very essence of her spirit, twisting her identity into something both desired and loathed. I watch as she shifts, her breath catching, a fleeting moment where the facade falters. Her name is Ilara, a name that dances delicately on the tongue, but the weight of it bears down on her like the world's expectations. I remember the first time I saw her, a rose blooming amidst thorns, standing at the edge of a lavish ballroom, the swirling gowns around her a cacophony of colors, yet all I could see was her, standing still, a haunting beauty in a world that demanded so much more than she was willing to give. "Why do you wear them?" I can't help but ask, the words spilling out like spilled ink, dark and messy, echoing in the silence. Her eyes flash, a storm brewing beneath the surface, 1,000 thoughts swirling like the dust motes in the air, caught in the beams of light. "It's expected," she replies, her voice barely above a whisper, but it's laced with defiance. "Beauty is pain, they say. What is a woman without her allure?" The edges of her smile tremble, and I feel the sting of her unspoken truth. This is not just about shoes, this is the weight of 1,000 expectations, each one sharper than the last, each one driving deeper into her flesh. Beside her stands Lyric, her friend, a vibrant spark in this dimly lit world. He leans against the wall, arms crossed over his chest, a smirk plastered on his face, but the eyes tell a different story. He knows the cost of beauty, he's seen it etch lines of despair into her skin, lines that no makeup can conceal. "Elara, you're not a statue," he chides gently, yet there's a tremor in his voice, a worry that gnaws at him, raw and unsettling. "These shoes will break you. You're more than this." "But what if I'm not?" she shoots back, and the words hit me like a punch to the gut. What if this is all she has? What if the pointed shoes are her only claim to a world that seems determined to overlook her? I see the shadows in her eyes deepen, the flicker of hope dimming beneath the weight of her choices, and it crushes me. I remember the night the three of us sat beneath the stars, the laughter spilling into the cool night air, a stark contrast to the heaviness of this moment. Lyric had joked about the absurdity of our existence. Just imagine a world where we bathe more than once a year. Ah, romance! We had laughed until our stomachs hurt, but now, laughter feels like a distant memory, silenced by the allure of pointed shoes that dig into flesh and spirit alike. Suddenly, Elara stumbles, her ankle twisting, and I feel my heart lurch. It's a small moment, but the world narrows, and all I can see is her, crumpling to the floor, shoes like sharpened weapons mocking her fall. "See?" Lyric rushes to her side, his voice strained. "This is what they do. They're torture disguised as fashion." His hands tremble as he reaches for her, his concern a lifeline as her bravado shatters like thin glass. "I'm fine," she snaps, anger flaring up like a sudden fire, but I can hear the cracks in her voice, the vulnerability she tries to mask. The pointed shoes glimmer in the dim light, taunting, cruel reminders of the beauty she fights for, the beauty that is slowly eroding her. "You're not fine," I whisper, my own heart pounding in rhythm to her struggle. "You're a prisoner of your own making. You deserve to feel free." The words slip out before I can catch them, desperation bleeding into my voice. I want her to see what I see, an incredible woman who is so much more than the shoes she wears. But the pointed tips seem to mock me, sharp and unforgiving, a barrier between us. Elara's gaze hardens, and for a fraction of a second, the world holds its breath. "Freedom," she scoffs, laughter edged with bitter truth. What is freedom when the world is built on the foundation of beauty? It's nothing but a lie we tell ourselves. There's a flicker of pain in her eyes, a memory, perhaps, of dreams long since buried beneath layers of silk and satin. The clock ticks on, each second a cruel reminder of time slipping away. I remember the stories my grandmother told me about the lengths women went to for beauty, tales of corsets that crushed ribs, of skin that burned beneath the sun's relentless gaze. The pointed shoe is a continuation of that lineage, a symbol of sacrifice, of beauty that comes at a cost too steep to pay. But as I look at Elara, I can't help but wonder, at what point does beauty become a snare? Lyric's frustration boils over, and he turns away, fists clenched. "What will it take, Elara? A broken foot? A shattered heart?" His voice cracks, vulnerability spilling out from his carefully constructed armor. "Each step you take is a step toward your own undoing. You deserve more than this." His words hang in the air, heavy with the weight of truth and desperation. And there it is, a moment suspended in time, a collision of thoughts and fears, dreams and realities. Elara's eyes shimmer, a storm brewing beneath the surface, a tempest of emotions threatening to unleash. The pointed shoes, once a symbol of aspiration, now feel like shackles, a cruel reminder of what it means to conform. I remember, she begins, hesitant, the memories pouring out like a slow trickle of water, each word a droplet in a vast ocean. I remember when I thought beauty was power. I remember when I wanted to be seen. Her voice falters, the vulnerability raw and exposed. But now, the rest hangs unspoken, a chasm of despair gaping wide. The clock ticks on, the shadows lengthening, the room swallowing us whole. Each moment stretches, the air thick with uncertainty, a weight that presses against our chests, as if the pointed shoes have all but consumed us. We are trapped in a cycle of beauty and pain, a haunting reality that refuses to let us go. And as we stand on the precipice, caught between dreams and nightmares, the pointed shoes whisper their cruel secrets, a siren's call that lingers in the air. What will it take to break free? What will it cost us to truly be seen, to step out from the shadows and into the light, unburdened by the weight of expectation? In this moment, we are caught, suspended in the tension, breathless and raw, lost in the haunting allure of pain masquerading as beauty. A chilling wind swept through the market square, stirring the heavy scents of sweat and stale bread. I stood there, invisible, cloaked in the shadows of old stone walls, watching the world unravel in a tapestry of fur and feathers. The air was electric, charged with unspoken tensions, as the wealthy paraded by in opulent displays of status, a fox stole draped haughtily across shoulders, feathers cascading from elaborate hats, each ornament a proclamation of superiority. I remember the glint of sun on polished boots, the laughter that rang hollow, like glass shattering in the night. There was Elara, her chin held high, a crown of peacock feathers framing her face like a throne, demanding attention. She was everything I wished I could be, fearless, fierce, a goddess cloaked in the skins of the vanquished. Yet beneath that armor, I could see the tremors of insecurity, the way her eyes flickered when someone whispered behind her back. They called her the Feather Queen, the envy of all, but I knew the truth, she was a fragile bird, one strong gust away from crashing to the ground. Then there was Rowan, a man clad in the pelts of animals that once roamed wild and free, now mere trophies, mere reminders of what was lost. His presence exuded a haunting allure, the kind that bit at the skin and sank into the soul. But that veneer of confidence hid a heart twisted in knotty roots of sorrow. I remembered the nights he spent wandering beneath the stars, whispering apologies to ghosts, the echoes of his past wrapped around him like the furs he wore, a constant reminder of his family's legacy. The tragedy of it all swirled in the air, thick like smoke, choking the breath from my lungs. A commotion erupted at the edge of the square, and I felt the tremor of anticipation ripple through the crowd. A nobleman, cloaked in a shimmering coat of ermine, strutted forward, his laughter coarse like sandpaper. They called him Lord Sorin, the man who collected furs as one might collect rare coins. I could see Elara's posture stiffen, her expression shifting, a mast slipping, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. This was no ordinary encounter, this was a collision of worlds, a clash of wills. A heartbeat pulsed in the air, thick with unspoken words, as Sorin stepped closer to Elara, an insidious smile creeping across his lips. "What exquisite taste you have, my lady," he purred, his voice coated in honey but laced with venom. "That ensemble is quite extravagant. Wouldn't you agree it's a touch too ostentatious?" The words dripped like poison, each syllable a dagger aimed directly at her heart. I could see Elara's hands tremble, the delicate fingers adorned with rings that sparkled in defiance of the dark clouds gathering in her eyes. "And what of your own attire, Lord Sorin?" she shot back, a flame igniting in her chest. "Does it not reflect your desperation to impress?" The crowd held its breath, the tension palpable, a taut string ready to snap. I wanted to scream, to shout, to break the spell of silence. Instead, I felt paralyzed, caught between admiration and despair. This moment, the struggle, the confrontation, echoed through time, a reminder of the ancient dance between power and vulnerability. Feathers rustled as Elara turned away, retreating into the shadows. But I followed, compelled by an invisible thread of empathy, an ache that pulsed in my own chest. "Elara!" I called, my voice barely a whisper, a ghost lost in the wind. "You don't have to let him win." But she didn't hear me, she was too consumed by the weight of expectation, the chains of status. I watched as she crumbled beneath the burden, the feathers that once adorned her now a shroud of despair. The crowd dissipated, leaving behind the echoes of laughter mingled with the bitterness of defeat. Running through the empty streets, I found Rowan leaning against a crumbling wall, the moonlight casting shadows that danced around him like specters. His hands were stained with the remnants of a life spent hunting for respect while shackled to the legacy of his family's brutal past. "Did you see her?" he breathed, his voice thick with concern. "She's breaking, and I can't." "Then don't let her," I interrupted, urgency clawing at my throat. "You know how to revive her spirit. You faced your own demons, don't let her face this alone." Rowan's eyes flickered with uncertainty, a storm brewing within. "But what do I have to offer?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice betraying his bravado. "I'm nothing but a hunter wrapped in the skins of the fallen, a reminder of their wounds." "Maybe it's time to stop hunting," I replied, my heart racing, words pouring from my lips like a flood. "Maybe it's time to embrace the fragility we all carry." The shadows seemed to lean closer, as if waiting for the moment when fear and hope would collide. An unholy alliance hung in the air, captivating and terrifying. The clock ticked relentlessly in the background, each second echoing the heartbeat of the universe, urging us toward a truth we were too ashamed to admit. I turned back toward the square, the remnants of confrontation lingering like smoke. There, Ilara was standing alone, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She was a warrior, but even warriors could bleed. I wanted to reach out, to tell her she was more than the feathers that adorned her, more than the status she wore like a cloak. In that moment, I felt the universe swell around us, a cosmic dance of destiny and despair. "Rowan," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "this is where it begins, where we shed the skins of our past and embrace the rawness of who we are." With every heartbeat, every breath, we stood at the precipice, poised for collision, like the irresistible pull of the tides against the shore. The city, with its whispers of history and echoes of time, watched in silence. The weight of our fears hung heavy in the air, begging for release, begging for redemption. And just like that, we were caught in the storm, drawing closer to the moment when furs and feathers would no longer bind us but become our wings, our symbols of freedom, our declaration against the shadows. The world was waiting, holding its breath for the unraveling that was to come. The air is thick with desperation, the kind that clings like the oppressive fabric of a corset. It constricts, it suffocates. I stand in the dimly lit room, shadows flickering at the edges, the moonlight spilling through the cracked window like a ghost reaching out to pull me into its embrace. My chest tightens with every heartbeat, and I can hear the rustle of fabric, stitching and seams whispering secrets of women who wore these devices before me. I remember the stories told in hushed tones, the gasps, the laughter, and the agony, all woven into the very fibers of the corset. Clara stands before the mirror, her hands trembling as they glide over the lace and boning, her reflection a haunting spectre of beauty and pain. "Am I beautiful?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper, as if the question itself could shatter the fragile glass. Her eyes, pools of uncertainty, search for affirmation in the depths of her own soul, but all I see is the flicker of doubt, the fear of inadequacy. She is a living canvas, an art piece molded by the whims of society, and yet the price she pays is etched in the lines of her brow. "You are more than beautiful, Clara," I manage, though the words taste bitter, caught in the throat of truth. "But can beauty be worth this?" I gesture toward the corset, a serpent coiling around her middle, squeezing her waist into submission. She smiles, a tremor of hope in her lips, but it's a fragile thing, the kind that could crumble under the weight of expectation. And then there's Eleanor, a firebrand in a world of silk and lace, her spirit unyielding, defiant against the very ideals that bind us. She paces the room, boots thudding against the wooden floor, the sound echoing like a battle drum. "Clara, you cannot let this monstrosity dictate who you are. It's madness, a prison disguised as fashion." Her voice rises, passionate and raw, a fierce wind against the stillness that smothers us. But even as she rages, I see the flicker of fear in her eyes, the fear of rejection, the fear of being seen as less than perfect. "I remember," Eleanor continues, her breath escaping like a whisper of wind, "when I was a child, I thought beauty was like the moon, so far, so untouchable. But now, it's a corset, a cage. What kind of beauty is that?" Her fists clench and unclench, a storm brewing within her. The shadows dance around her, whispering doubts, teasing her with visions of a world that may never accept her, no matter how much she fights. "Give me strength, give me courage," she cries, her voice like a beacon, even as it trembles. But what if it's all for nothing? What if I am cast aside like a discarded dress? The room goes quiet, a suffocating silence where only our breaths can be heard, heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. Clara's gaze shifts from Eleanor to the mirror, and I can feel the weight of her indecision, the tug-of-war between conformity and rebellion. The corset tightens around her. No, it's not just the fabric, it's the expectations, the judgments, the relentless pursuit of perfection. What if I want to be accepted? What if I want to be loved? The air crackles with tension, each word a dagger piercing through the fragile facade. Love should not be a ledger of measurements, Eleanor retorts, her voice sharp as a blade. It should be a tapestry, woven with threads of authenticity. I see Clara's shoulders slump, slowly succumbing to the weight of her own desires, her own fears. Can't we have both? Clara whispers, and the question hangs in the air like a spell cast upon the room. The corset, a blight and a beauty, becomes the embodiment of their conflict. The fabric binds them, yet it reveals the very essence of their beings, a juxtaposition of strength and vulnerability. Outside, the city sleeps, unaware of the turmoil that brews within the walls of this room. A clock ticks in the distance, each chime resonating like a heartbeat, reminding us that time is a fleeting ghost, slipping through our fingers like sand. Time doesn't wait for beauty, Clara, Eleanor urges, her voice softer now, gentler, as if she's trying to soothe a wounded creature. You must break free, it's the only way to live. But Clara's breath quickens, her hands trembling against the lace. What if I lose everything? What if I am nothing without this? The words spill forth, heavy with the burden of her fears. I want to scream, to shake her free of the chains she's forged herself, but I am just an observer, a witness to this delicate dance of despair and hope. The moonlight filters through the window, illuminating the corset hanging like a spectre between them, reminding us of the ghosts that haunt every choice we make, every stitch we sew. I can feel the air grow colder, a chill creeping down my spine as Clara reaches for the corset, fingers hovering over the laces, indecision weaving through her heart like a storm. The room is alive with tension, every breath a silent prayer for courage. Step into the unknown, Clara, I find myself whispering, though I doubt my own conviction. The silence amplifies her hesitation, the weight of choice pressing down on her shoulders, as if the very universe holds its breath. And just as I think she'll reach for the laces, just as the tension threatens to snap, the clock strikes midnight. A sound that shatters the moment, and with it, the illusion of choice. Clara's hand falls away from the corset, a small gasp escaping her lips, fear and relief warring within her. Maybe tomorrow, she mumbles, retreating into herself, and I feel the crushing weight of 1,000 unsaid words filling the room. The corset remains, a silent witness to their struggles, an echo of a world that molds the body in ways unnatural, as if the very act of living is an art form to be perfected. As the moonlight wanes, shadows creep back into the corners, but the tension still clings to us, twisting in the depths of our souls. We are left in the dim light, two women caught in a web spun by society, each thread taut with unfulfilled desires, longing for something more, something real. The night stretches on, a heavy silence palpable between us, and I realize we stand on the precipice of change, the air electric with the weight of unspoken truths. So, we breathe. We breathe, and with each exhale, the world outside continues its spin, unaware of the battle raging within these walls. The corset hangs there, a reminder of the sacrifices made for beauty, of the choices that define us, of the soul still searching for a way to break free. The air was thick, oppressive as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow that felt like a warning, a promise of disaster. I stood there, heart racing, in that cramped alley, my hands trembling, clutching a small bundle of fabric dyed in colors so vibrant they seemed to pulse with life. But beneath the brilliance, a darkness lurked. Somewhere in the distance, a shriek pierced the twilight, shattering the silence, and I felt it resonate in my bones. It was a sound steeped in desperation, a warning of the cost that vibrancy demanded. A shadow flickered by me, barely visible, but I knew who it was. Lydia. My sister. Her eyes held a wildness, they sparkled with passion yet swirled with fear. She had always been the bold one, the dreamer, draped in hues of indigo and saffron that danced around her as if her very essence were woven into the fabric. You don't understand, James, she pleaded, voice quivering against the backdrop of the encroaching night. These dyes, they are powerful. They transform us. But at what price? We both knew the truth. Our father had spent years under the watchful gaze of the dye merchants, their greed brewing a storm within our family that churned like the very vats where the colors were born. Every vibrant hue came with a cost, a sacrifice that seeped into our lives like the dyes into the cloth. I watched as she clutched the fabric tighter, her knuckles white against the darkening world. We can create something beautiful, she whispered, but her voice cracked, revealing the weariness in her soul. Beautiful? Or cursed? I countered, the words spilling out before I could stop them. The thought of our family's legacy hanging by a thread, the legacy of suffering, the people who labored in the shadows, their hands stained, their spirits crushed, made my stomach churn. I remembered them, the echoes of their laughter laced with sorrow, their stories woven into the very seams of the garments Lydia yearned to create. Sometimes beauty requires blood, she said, her gaze piercing through me, demanding that I confront the ugliness hidden beneath those colors. I felt a chill creep down my spine, a realization I had denied for too long. The vibrant world around us was painted with the ashes of those who dared to dream too brightly. And in that moment, the city around us began to pulse, shadows dancing in the flickering light of the street lamps, taunting us with their secrets. I could hear the whispers of the land, the ghosts of merchants and artisans who had lost themselves in the pursuit of color, haunted by the vibrant dreams they once held close. Lydia, I began, but the words caught in my throat, lodged there like a stone. My heart thudded painfully as memories spiraled through my mind, sleepless nights spent poring over our father's ledgers, the bitter taste of betrayal, the screams of those who had suffered for our art. Do you want to be known for your brilliance? She shot back, her voice steady, unwavering. Or fade into obscurity like everyone else? A heartbeat echoed between us, heavy with the weight of our unspoken fears. I turned my gaze away, unable to hold the intensity of her stare, my heart a battlefield. The alley closed in, the colors of the fabric now a blinding storm. I remembered the first time we saw the dyes, the way they exploded in the air like fireworks, the intoxicating scent mixing with the damp earth, the way they seemed to promise freedom, to offer a doorway to a brighter world. But now? The intense colors were merely masks, hiding the sorrow beneath. Everything we create has a price, Lydia, I managed to say, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. What if we pay the ultimate price? A flicker of doubt crossed her face, and for a moment, I saw her falter, the wildness in her eyes dimming, the colors of her spirit fading. Do you think I don't realize the costs? She said, almost pleading, her voice a fragile whisper. Every time I dye a piece, every time I touch the fabric, I see their faces, the ones who came before us. I feel their pain. The twilight deepened, shadows lengthening, wrapping us in a cloak of uncertainty. The fabric slipped from my fingers, falling to the ground, and I reached for it instinctively. But I hesitated, the soft touch of the dye a reminder of the blood that had seeped into its fibers. What have we become? I breathed, feeling the heaviness of our choices settle like a shroud around us. Survivors, she replied, fierce, resolute. The colors around her seemed to shimmer, each hue a defiance against the darkness. And if we don't take this chance, what will remain? Dust? Despair? Oblivion? The alley sounded with the distant echo of laughter, a celebration, a mockery. And I could feel the pulse of the city, the veins of history running through us. I wanted to scream against the night, to shake the cosmos and demand an answer. But only silence answered back, leaving us stranded in that moment, suspended like a thread pulled taut. What are you willing to sacrifice? I asked, the question hanging in the air, charged with unspoken pain. My heart hammered, the rhythm echoing our shared history. Everything, she said, breathless, defiant. If it means creating a legacy. In that instant, the weight of our choices bore down upon us. I could feel the world shifting, colors swirling into a chaotic dance around us, the fabric pulling tighter, threads weaving a tapestry of our fears and dreams. The cries from the distance grew louder, a haunting reminder that the past never truly let go. And yet, we stood there, two souls tangled in a web of color and pain, the vibrant dawn of an uncertain future stretching out before us, promising something beautiful yet terrifying, a bold adventure painted in hues too brilliant to ignore. The night whispered secrets, the city held its breath. The shadows moved, the colors bled, and beneath our feet, the world trembled on the edge of change. We were on the precipice, and with each heartbeat, I felt the urgency thrumming through me, the pull of destiny urging us forward. "Then let it bleed," I said, a fierce resolve rising within me, igniting the flicker in her eyes once more. And as she nodded, a spark ignited between us, an unspoken pact sealed in blood and dye. We would confront the shadows, together, our hearts entwined in the colors of the fabric that would define us. As the city pulsed and the night deepened, we stepped into the swirling chaos, knowing that every vibrant thread carried a story, a sacrifice, a heartbeat. And in that moment, we embraced the cost of vibrancy, ready to face whatever darkness awaited us. The cool, biting wind cut through the alley, swirling scraps of plastic and forgotten dreams. I stood shivering, heart hammering in my chest, eyes darting from shadow to shadow, wondering if I could ever feel safe here. The streetlights flickered like lost souls, illuminating the tattered remnants of a city that had become a stage for whispers and secrets. And there, against the crumbling brick wall, was Sam, my best friend, my anchor, his breath visible in the frigid air, wearing an oversized floral dress that billowed around him like a ghost. Why did it feel wrong? Why did it feel electric? The contrast was startling, the fabric a riot of color and femininity against the backdrop of a world too often painted in stark blacks and grays. I could see the apprehension in his eyes, as if wearing that dress was an act of defiance, a challenge to the rules that had kept us shackled. And yet, there was liberation coursing through him, a spark of rebellion that made me feel both exhilarated and terrified. "I remember the first time I put on my mom's clothes," he said, voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid the wind would carry his confession away. "Those old summer dresses, floral patterns, the soft fabric brushing against my skin. It felt right. But I didn't tell anyone. Not then. Not ever." The words hung heavy in the air, thick with longing. I shifted my weight, unable to look away, almost waiting for the other shoe to drop. This wasn't just about fabric and seams. This was about identity, about tearing down the walls that had been built around us, brick by brick. "Why does it matter?" I asked, my own voice trembling. "Why do you care what they think?" "They think I'm a freak," he shot back, the fire in his eyes igniting. "But I'm not. I'm just me. And I want to wear what makes me feel alive." The tension crackled between us, a live wire threatening to snap. I could sense the fear, the heartbreak clawing at his insides, and it mirrored my own. I remembered the countless moments I wore a mask, pretending to fit into a mold that never felt quite right. I remembered the silence that echoed in my heart when I wore clothes that weren't mine, feeling as though I was living someone else's life. Then there was Lily, our fierce, bleeding heart friend, who had been lurking in the shadows, observing us with her own storm of emotions. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of admiration and envy, her fingers twitching at the seams of the oversized jacket she had borrowed from her brother. She had a way of blending into the background, yet her presence was always felt like a whisper of wind before a storm. "I wish I could wear what I want," she said suddenly, fierce energy radiating from her. "But I'm too scared. They'll laugh. They'll judge. Just like they did that time I wore the bright yellow skirt to school. I felt so happy, but the looks, you'd think I was, I don't know, a clown." There was a heaviness in her words that sank deep into my chest, an understanding that cut through our insecurities like a knife. We were all trapped, shackled by expectations, by norms that suffocated our spirits. Around us, the world kept spinning, oblivious to our struggles, our desires. "I remember," I whispered, the memory choking me. "I remember when I wore makeup for the first time, how liberating it felt. But when I stepped outside, the laughter cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to be free, but instead, I was more trapped. The silence fell like a heavy blanket, suffocating yet spacious, filled with unspoken dreams and fears. I looked back at Sam, his floral dress a chaotic explosion of color in a world that craved conformity. He was a warrior, fighting against the tide of societal expectations, and there I was, the coward hiding behind my own fears. "Maybe it's time to stop hiding," he said, voice trembling but resolute. "Maybe it's time for all of us to wear what feels right, to break the chains that bind us. The world doesn't have to be this way. We can change it." Those words hung in the air, sparking something within me, an ember of hope, a flicker of possibility. I could feel the aching desire to shed my own skin, to become something more vibrant, more authentic. But the weight of the world pressed down on my shoulders, every stigma, every judgment threatening to drown me in doubt. But there was Sam, standing tall in his dress, defiant as the moon in the night sky. I could feel the heart-pounding intensity of this moment, the raw, undeniable truth that surged through our veins. We were not just individuals, we were a collective, a force of nature waiting to be unleashed. In that alley, as the world continued its relentless march, we began to shed our fears, one layer at a time. I could see the spark igniting in Lily's eyes, a fierce determination brewing beneath the surface. "Let's do it," she said, her voice rising, emboldened. "Let's wear what we want. No more hiding." And just like that, we stood at the precipice of a new reality. We were on the cusp of a revolution, liberation stitched into the very fabric of our souls. The city hummed around us, the shadows whispering secrets and promises, and we knew, in that moment, we were ready to break free. With every heartbeat, every breath, we felt the world shift, just a little. The night was filled with possibility, and as we stepped forward into the void, the line between who we were and who we could become blurred, a tapestry of dreams waiting to be woven. As we walked into the chaotic pulse of the city, a sense of urgency surged through us. This was just the beginning, a spark igniting a flame that threatened to consume the darkness. And we were ready to burn brightly, together. The clamor of the court echoed like thunder, a cacophony of silk rustling and jewels clinking, reverberating through the towering halls of the palace. I stood in the shadows, breathless, heart racing, as the opulent ball unfolded before me, a spectacle of grandeur that shrouded a deeper darkness. The laughter was a mask, a shroud woven from threads of deceit, and I felt the weight of it pressing against my chest. Here, the air bristled with desperation, hidden beneath layers of lace and satin, where beauty was a weapon and extravagance cloaked sorrow. Lady Evangeline glided across the marble floor, dressed in a gown that billowed like a storm cloud, each layer heavy with pearls and embroidered with gold, so much beauty, but her eyes betrayed her, glimmering with the sharpness of shattered dreams. I could see the tension coiling around her, a serpent ready to strike. Beneath her delicate smile lay the burden of 1,000 whispered secrets, of choices made in the dark. She was trapped in a gilded cage, and I was drawn to her, a moth to a flame, feeling the heat of her conflict radiating in waves. "Look at me," she whispered, but her words were laced with a nervous desperation. "Am I beautiful enough?" The question hung in the air like a haunting specter, and I wanted to scream that her worth extended far beyond the fabric that adorned her body. But the court would never hear that truth, drowning instead in the excess, the surface of glittering waters concealing the chaos beneath. Across the room, Lord Sebastian watched with a piercing gaze, his tailored attire a tapestry of arrogance, yet his heart throbbed with a longing that mirrored my own. A man of privilege, yet shackled by duty, he too felt the suffocating weight of expectation. The glint of his dagger, hidden beneath layers of brocade, wasn't merely a weapon, it was a representation of his internal struggle. Each bright jewel on his tunic glittered like the stars, but they whispered reminders of the blood that stained his hands, an inheritance he could never escape. I watched as Evangeline and Sebastian circled one another, drawn together by an unnameable force, the electric charge of their shared pain crackling in the ornate ballroom. The air thickened with unspoken desires, palpable and raw. I remember the way Evangeline's fingers trembled as she adjusted the delicate lace at her wrist, the tension mounting like a coiled spring, waiting to snap. I remembered the way Sebastian's jaw clenched, each of his breaths a silent plea for freedom from the chains of royal duty that bound him. "Do you think they see us?" Evangeline asked, her voice barely a whisper against the backdrop of laughter. Do they know the truth behind these masks? The question cut through the air, sharp as a dagger's edge, and I felt the chill of it crawling up my spine. No, Sebastian replied, his voice low and resolute, as if he were attempting to convince himself as much as her. They only see the finery, the display. They do not seek the truth, only the spectacle. I felt the weight of those words sink deep into my heart, a reminder of how easily we all hid behind our adornments, cloaked in the illusion of elegance while the reality remained grotesque. But in that moment of connection, a fire ignited between them, a spark that could not be contained. Evangeline stepped closer, her breath mingling with his, a dangerous intimacy forming in the space between their lavish attire. They were caught in the tension of their own making, yearning to break free from the shackles of expectation that bound them to this extravagant charade. I could feel the pulse of their desperation, a rhythm that echoed the pounding in my own chest, and my heart raced with the anticipation of the storm that was brewing on the horizon. Then, in an instant, the facade cracked. A sudden commotion erupted from the far end of the ballroom, where a nobleman stumbled, his face twisted in agony, clutching his throat, choking on the very air of extravagance that surrounded us. Gasps echoed, jewels clattered to the floor like forgotten dreams, and chaos erupted. Evangeline's eyes widened, and I could feel her heart lurch. What if it's poison, she breathed, the color draining from her cheeks. I watched as her composure shattered, as the court's laughter transformed into a discordant symphony of fear. The glimmering world around us began to warp, the silks became a shroud, heavy and suffocating. Sebastian, however, stood resolute, his eyes scanning the crowd, searching for the source of the horror. We must find the truth, he declared, a fire igniting within him, a fierce need to protect what little was left of their fragile world. We cannot let the darkness win. His voice cut through the panic like a blade, rallying those around him, pushing them toward action. But as Evangeline trembled beside him, her dreams of a fairy tale slipping away, I saw the depth of her fear reflected in his gaze. The night had morphed from a celebration to a reckoning, exposing the ghosts that danced in the corners of their minds. The clock on the wall, a grotesque symbol of time's relentless march, ticked ominously, each second a reminder of the choices they had yet to make, the stakes they had yet to confront. I felt the weight of it, the way it wrapped around us like a noose. Life and death intertwined in this moment, as fashion became a battlefield where hearts were laid bare, and the true cost of extravagance was finally revealed. And as I stood among them, caught in the whirlwind of emotions, I knew this was not merely about the fashion that draped them in beauty. No, this was about the weight of legacy, about the shadows that trailed behind them like ghosts, haunting, relentless, unyielding. The noble courts, wrapped in their splendor, were crumbling beneath the weight of their own excess, and I could only watch as the fabric of their lives began to unravel. In the heart of this chaos, something stirred, a confrontation brewing on the horizon. It was the moment where choice collided with consequence, and I knew that the night would not end quietly. The court had its secrets, and the fashion that adorned them was but a thin veil over the tumult of emotions that churned beneath. The story was only beginning, and I felt the air crackle with intensity. I clung to that feeling, to the hope and despair mingling in the atmosphere, knowing that the next act would unveil truth wrapped in silk and shadow, where the extravagance of royal attire could be both a mask and a weapon. And as the clock ticked on, I braced myself for the unfolding drama that promised to grip us all, an unending cycle of beauty and betrayal, a dance that would echo through the ages. Chapter 11. The plague and its impact on fashion choices. The air was thick, a heavy blanket of despair that wrapped itself around every soul in the city. I stood at the window, watching the streets below, once lively with laughter and chatter, now silent, haunted by ghosts of joy long since departed. The plague had come, creeping like a thief in the night, stealing life and leaving only shadows in its wake. I remember the day it arrived. I remember the smell of damp earth, the chill settling deep into my bones. I remember my heart racing, pounding against my chest like a drum heralding calamity. In the distance, I saw Eliza, a once vibrant woman draped in layers of tattered fabric, the rich colors of her silk dress reduced to a faded memory. She was a mere specter, her laughter now stifled by the grim reality of survival, each thread of her gown a symbol of mourning for a world that was slipping away. Her eyes, once sparkling with mischief, mirrored the desolation of the streets. Eliza faced the mirror of her existence, her reflection a cruel reminder of what had been lost, beauty stripped bare by the invasive hand of death. She clutched a fraying shawl around her shoulders, a flimsy armor against the chill of uncertainty. Then there was Thomas, my dear friend, a man caught in the web of his fears. He was a tailor, a dreamer who once fashioned garments for the aristocracy, each stitch a testament to his artistry. Now he stood in the dim light of his dying shop, surrounded by remnants of a time when fabric could transform lives. But now, with the plague weaving its dark thread through the city, every cut of cloth felt like a betrayal, a mockery of the joy it once brought. What is fashion, he mused aloud, when the world is draped in death? His hands trembled as he held a piece of fabric, rich and inviting, but now cursed by the air that clung to it like a shroud. People are dying, Thomas, Eliza said, her voice hoarse, as she pushed through the door, the bells chime now a hollow echo. What do they care for embellishments? We must think of survival. Her words were a dagger, piercing the very heart of his artistic soul. He looked at her, his face a storm of frustration and anguish. But the heart needs beauty, Eliza. Even in despair. I could see the tension crackling between them, like the first flash of lightning before a storm. She turned away, her breath shallow, her heart heavy with the weight of necessity. Beauty will not save us. It will not shield us from the cold hand of death. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the shawl, a desperate attempt to cover the mortification that had become their lives. The city was losing its color, fading into a palette of gray and despair. The streets were filled with people wrapped in rags, their once fine garments now mere shields against the harshness of the plague. They no longer cared for the elegance of a finely tailored suit or the delicate lace of a gown. Survival was the only fashion statement that mattered now. I watched as they hurried, heads down, eyes cast away from one another, shame masking their faces like a heavy veil. The rich exchanged their silks for wool, the poor their rags for whatever scraps could be scavenged. A man stumbled past, clutching a tattered coat that had once graced the shoulders of an aristocrat. He wore it like a badge of honor now, a way to proclaim his defiance against a fate that sought to strip him of every last shred of dignity. The streets whispered stories of loss, of fear, of the desperate lengths to which people would go to hold on to hope, even if that hope was just a threadbare coat. And yet, in the heart of this chaos, Thomas found a flicker of rebellion. What if, he began, his voice trembling and alive with desperation, we turned the plague into art? What if we wore our sorrow on our sleeves? He envisioned a line of garments, a testament to their survival, each piece a story woven into the fabric of their existence. We can stitch together our pain, make it beautiful. Eliza's eyes widened with a mix of horror and wonder. You mean to celebrate our suffering, she gasped, horrified at the thought yet enthralled by the audacity of it. You would create beauty from death. Yes, he exclaimed, the fervor igniting in his belly like wildfire. The world has taken so much from us. Let us take back a piece, let us reclaim our lives. The notion hung heavy in the air, an idea both absurd and magnificent. I watched them, two souls grappling with the reality of their existence, finding a fragile thread of hope in the threads of despair. They began to gather pieces of fabric from the ruins of their former lives, snippets of cloth that whispered of love and loss. They worked through the night, stitching together not only fabric but also their emotions, fear, grief, and a daring glimmer of resilience. But the clock was ticking. Time was a relentless beast, and the plague loomed ever closer, waiting to snatch away their dreams with a single breath. As night fell, shadows danced across their faces, illuminating the rawness of their struggle. The weight of the world bore down on them, yet the flicker of hope ignited a fierce determination that clung to the air like a promise. The first dawn light broke through the darkness, and as the sun rose, so did their creations, a breathtaking tapestry of grief and defiance, a chaotic explosion of colors reflecting the turmoil of their lives. I felt the air shift, charged with intensity. It was a moment suspended in time, a brief, breathless pause before the world would tilt once more. As they stepped into the street, adorned in their creations, they became living canvases of their struggle. The city, with its dying heartbeat, paused to witness the beauty forged in the fires of calamity. And in that moment, as the shadows danced around them, I felt the pull of hope, intertwined with the haunting reminder of what was lost. The plague had changed the fabric of their existence, but it had not extinguished the flame of creation. In the eerie silence that followed, the streets held their breath, waiting. What would come next? Would the beauty they had woven withstand the darkness? Would the world accept their rebellion against despair? I stood there, pulse quickening, heart racing, aware that this was not the end, but merely the beginning of a story that would twist and turn like the very threads they had sewn. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, the tension palpable, as the echoes of life and death entwined, leading us into the next chapter of their extraordinary tale, a tale that, just like the fabric they wore, was far from finished. The air was thick, charged with the kind of tension that makes your heart race. It clung to your skin, an unseen weight pressing down as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced like phantoms across the cobblestone streets. The marketplace was alive and chaotic, vibrant fabrics from distant lands fluttered like trapped souls, their colors dulled by the dust of uncountable journeys. My pulse quickened not with excitement, but with dread. Somewhere amidst the clamor, a deal was about to go wrong, a trade that could spill blood just as easily as it delivered silk. I remember the glint in Kira's eyes, the way her hands trembled as she touched the exquisite piece of jade that had traveled from the depths of the east, its surface cool and inviting. "It's worth more than gold," she whispered, a mix of awe and desperation lacing her words. Her ambition was palpable, a fire that sparked beneath her otherwise stoic facade, but ambition can be as treacherous as the dagger hidden within the folds of her dress. I could see it, the dream of wealth, of power, and of escape from the suffocating grip of this town. But then there was Alaric, his presence looming like a storm cloud. I could almost taste the bitterness in the air when he stepped closer, his voice low, threaded with anger. "You don't understand, Kira. It's not just a piece of stone, it's a contract, a promise to the wrong people." He had seen too much, and his heart, once open and hopeful, now resembled the jagged edges of a broken shield. The fear etched onto his face was mingled with something else, love, perhaps, or was it regret? I couldn't tell. "Let them come," she snapped, her voice a war cry. "I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of living like rats, scuttling in shadows." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of her unfulfilled dreams. I could feel the crowd around us retract, as if sensing the storm brewing. They were traders, travelers, merchants from unknown lands, accumulating wares that whispered tales of their exotic origins. I could see the fabrics, shimmering with hues only dreams dared to conjure, crimsons of distant sunsets, blues of endless oceans, greens that hummed with the pulse of ancient forests. Each piece carried the ghosts of its journey, the whispers of every hand that had touched it. The night grew darker, but the lanterns flickered to life, illuminating the tension that spiraled between Kira and Alaric. The streets, once a cacophony of laughter and chatter, had fallen into an eerie silence, punctuated only by the rustling of garments and the distant clanging of metal. I felt the world shrink around me, constricting until my breath caught in my throat. "What are you willing to sacrifice for your dreams, Kira?" Alaric's voice was gravel. "What if it costs you everything?" In that moment, I felt the fabric of fate shift. I could see it written in the air, the ominous script of consequence unfurling before us. I remember the whispers of the trade routes that had brought us together, the way they twisted and turned like the tangled threads of our lives. Silk from the east, spices from the south, and the bones of the dead from the north. Each route a vein, pulsing with the lifeblood of empires, each stop fraught with peril, each exchange a gamble with destiny. Kira's laughter rang out, a sound so sharp, it was almost a weapon. "Let them come," she repeated, her eyes ablaze with reckless defiance. "I won't be their pawn any longer." Yet I saw the flicker of fear, a whisper of doubt that threatened to drown her fire. She wanted freedom, but at what cost? I could see the ghost of her childhood, the girl who had once dreamed of fairy tales, lost to the grasp of ambition. Alaric took a step back, his hands balled into fists, knuckles white against the encroaching darkness. "You think you're invincible, don't you? But you're not. You're just as fragile as the glass beads they sell." He was unraveling, and I could feel the pull of their shared history, the bond that lay beneath their conflict, a love twisted by circumstance, by the weight of their choices. As night fell like a shroud, the first whispers of the storm began to echo in the distance. I could hear the low rumble, feel the electricity crackle in the air, and I knew something was coming. The traders, once animated, had become statues, their eyes darting between us as if they were witnessing the last act of a dreadful play. The market, once a tapestry of color and noise, had turned into a stage, a battleground of dreams and despair. I remember the moment when Kira reached for Alaric, her fingers brushing against his arm, a silent plea that spoke volumes. "I need you to trust me," she breathed, but trust was a fragile thing, as delicate as the silks that surrounded us. Their eyes locked in a fierce collision of desire and doubt, and I felt the world tilt, the line between friendship and love blurring into something dangerous. But the shadows were shifting beyond the lanterns, and I could feel the cold fingers of fate tightening around us. The trade routes had brought us here, but they were also a reminder of everything we had to lose. Each exotic material and style was a siren song, luring us deeper into a web we might never escape. I could feel it in my bones, something had to give, and with every heartbeat, the air thickened with an impending reckoning. A figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked and menacing, eyes glinting like shards of glass. The crowd parted, and suddenly, I was drowning in a sea of apprehension. Kira's defiance flickered, and Alaric's fear twisted into something palpable and real. The air hummed with the weight of unanswered questions, and I realized then that the trade routes had woven more than just fabric and spices into our lives. They had stitched our fates together, binding us in a tapestry of unspoken truths and unrelenting desires. As the figure stepped closer, I could see the tension in Kira's shoulders, the way she squared herself against the unknown. She was a warrior now, but at what cost? Alaric's eyes were wide, his heart pounding against the cage of his ribs, as if he could sense the inevitable clash of past and future looming just beyond the veil of night. And amidst the chaos, I felt myself unraveling too, a thread pulled taut, ready to snap at the slightest touch. This was more than just trade, this was survival, love, and the haunting echoes of everything we had sacrificed to reach this moment. The weight of our choices bore down on us, and as the figure drew nearer, the fragile balance of dreams and reality hung in the air, waiting to shatter. This was our moment. The storm was here. The trade routes had led us into the eye of the tempest, and the only question left was, who would emerge whole, and who would be lost to the shadows? I remember the chill, the way it wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, threading itself through the cracks in the walls of the dimly lit room. The candle flickered, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the stone floor. The air was thick, heavy with something unspoken, something that clung to the skin like the layers of fabric we wore. I stood there, heart pounding, watching Clara as she fumbled with the laces of her corset. Her fingers trembled, not just from the tightness of the fabric but from the weight of expectations that pressed upon her like a steel cage. She was beautiful, yes, but there was an edge to her, a wildness that threatened to spill over. The scent of beeswax and desperation mingled in the air, and I could feel the tension between us crackle like the electricity before a storm. "Do you ever wonder what it's like to be free?" she asked, her voice barely rising above the whisper of the candle flame. There was a longing in her eyes, a ferocity that cut right through the layers of silk and linen, exposing the raw flesh of desire beneath. To shed all of this, she gestured to the constricting fabric of her dress, the corset that held her tight, squeezing the breath out of her. I couldn't answer her. I only remembered the last time I had felt that sweet, sweet taste of liberation. Barefoot on the cobblestones, the world around me burst with color, the laughter of children intertwining with the cries of street vendors. But that was before reality set in, before the weight of societal chains wrapped themselves around my ankles. "Freedom is an illusion," I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. It was a mantra I repeated, a way to numb the ache in my chest. Clara's eyes darkened, and I could see the flicker of rebellion behind them, simmering just below the surface. "What do you know of freedom?" she shot back, her anger igniting the room like gunpowder. "You hide behind your own layers, just like me. We're all prisoners of our own making." Her hands moved deftly, pulling the laces tighter, each tug a silent scream of defiance. In that moment, I saw the truth wrapped in her fury. I thought of the countless layers we wore, not just as fabrics against our bodies but as facades, masks, and roles defined by a world quick to judge. The medieval world, with its grotesque and bizarre customs, had twisted our very beings. They bathed once a year, I thought bitterly. So yeah, romance was earthy. A sudden crack in the silence shattered my reverie, a loud bang echoed from the other room, pulling us both back to the present. Clara froze, breath hitching in her throat. "What was that?" she whispered, eyes wide, scanning the shadows as if they dared to spill their secrets. The night was alive, a creature of its own, threatening to engulf us. I could feel the weight of time pressing down, the ancient clocks in the corners of our minds ticking mercilessly, counting down as if our lives depended on it. Each chime twisted our hearts, echoing through the darkness, reminding us of our fragility. "I remember," I whispered, a confession spilling from my lips. "I remember my mother telling me stories of how underwear evolved, how women turned heavy layers of wool and linen into delicate lace, each piece a testament to resilience. But here we are, still bound by fabric, still slaves to the whims of fashion." Clara's eyes softened, the fire of anger giving way to a flicker of understanding. "But isn't it beautiful too?" she asked, the tremor in her voice betraying her yearning. "To take something so mundane, so practical, and turn it into art." I found myself reflecting on those layers, how they changed, how they evolved from the crude, heavy garments meant for warmth and modesty to the intricate lace designs that whispered of sensuality and freedom. It was a dance of fabric and skin, a symbolic struggle that mirrored our own lives. We draped ourselves in beauty while hiding the raw, aching truths beneath. Yet, at that moment, the clock struck, sending a pulse through the air that seemed to synchronize with our racing hearts. The shadows crept closer, and outside, the night held its breath. I could feel the walls pressing in, the history of our garments, of our lives, suffocating yet thrilling. "Maybe it's the act of layering and unlayering that defines us," I mused, the words spilling out as Clara's fingers danced over her laces, loosening them. Each layer, a story. Each untying, a revelation. As the last lace fell away, a sigh escaped her lips, and for a heartbeat, it felt as if the world had shifted. The candle flickered wildly, the shadows stretching and twisting, as if they too were longing for release. Clara stood there, the remnants of her constriction pooling at her feet like fallen leaves, and for a moment, she looked untouchable, a goddess of her own making. But the moment shattered like glass underfoot, the bang from earlier echoing through the room again. This time, it was louder, more insistent. Fear wrapped around us, a tightening noose that promised danger. The air was electric, charged with the possibilities of what lay behind that door. I wanted to reach out, to pull Clara back into the safety of our shared madness, but there was a wildness in her eyes that mirrored my own. In that moment, we were both so alive, so bereft of the burdens that had weighed us down for too long. "Are we ready to face what lies beyond?" she asked, her voice firm, yet trembling with anticipation. I could feel the ghost of our shared histories pressing against us, the burdens of those layers whispering from the corners of the room. "Yes," I said, the word a promise, a prayer. And as we stepped toward the door, the weight of our pasts clinging to us like shadows, I couldn't help but think of what lay ahead. The evolution of underwear, of our lives, wasn't just about fabric. It was about the struggle for identity, for freedom, for the courage to shed what suffocated us. Together, we would confront the darkness, the shadows of our past wrapped tightly around us, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to weave our own stories into something exquisite, something that would echo through time. The shadows beckoned, and with a shared breath, we stepped into the unknown, ready to unravel and to lace anew. Never ending, never finished. The air crackled with tension, a sharp hum that felt alive, as if the very atmosphere conspired to shatter the uneasy silence. Ella stood there, hand trembling, clutching a delicate silver locket that she hadn't seen in years. Its surface was cool, cold against her skin, a ghost of the past that brought memories flooding back, moments that twisted like smoke in her mind. She remembered her mother, eyes bright with laughter, fingers deftly clasping the locket shut. "Don't ever take it off, Ella. It has stories," she had said, her voice a soft melody that echoed like a lullaby. But stories had a way of turning dark, didn't they? In the shadows, Marcus lingered, his brow furrowed as he watched Ella. He wore a belt that had seen better days, frayed at the edges, a metaphor for his own unraveling life. It held up not just his trousers but the weight of his regrets too, each notch a reminder of a promise he had broken, an opportunity he let slip through his fingers like sand. He fixed his gaze on her, his heart racing with something he dared not name, a mixture of longing and fear, a cocktail served in the glass of their shared history. "I found it in the attic," she whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence, but it was enough to cut him to the bone. "After everything. I thought it was gone." The locket dangled from her hand, glinting ominously under the flickering light. He remembered the stories it held, the laughter, the fights, the secrets that bound them together like threads in a fraying tapestry. But time had a way of distorting memories, twisting them into something grotesque. "Ella, you shouldn't," he stepped forward, but she raised her other hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't you dare tell me what I should or shouldn't do." The fierceness in her voice startled him, and for a heartbeat, he saw the girl she once was, not the woman hardened by loss and betrayal. "You left me in the dark, Marcus. You left us. And now you want to come back and dictate my choices." The words hung in the air, a tangible weight that threatened to suffocate them both. And in that moment, he caught a glimpse of the pouches she carried, tattered, filled with memories and dreams that had slipped through her fingers like sand. Each pouch was a chapter of her life, a collection of hopes and fears, woven together by her own insecurities. "I came back because I care," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I know I messed up, but can't we just care? Is that what you call it? You care from a distance, Marcus. You always have." The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. "You don't get to re-enter my life and act like nothing happened. Not after everything." Her words, heavy with pain, echoed in his soul. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm that separated them, a gaping void, filled with all the unsaid things, the sorrow, the guilt. He remembered their dreams, the nights spent whispering under the stars, the promise of forever etched in their hearts. But forever had a way of folding in on itself, like a cruel trick of time. And then she opened the locket. A click echoed through the air, a sound that reverberated in his chest. Inside, a faded photograph stared back at them, a snapshot of innocence lost, a younger version of themselves, laughter in their eyes. "We were so happy then," she murmured, tracing the edges with a finger as if trying to soothe the ache of nostalgia. "It wasn't real," Marcus said, the words spilling out like venom. "None of it was. You know that. We were just kids playing house." "Kids? You think I don't remember the nights I lay awake, haunted by the fear of losing you? You think I don't remember the day you walked away?" Her face twisted in anguish as tears spilled down her cheeks, glistening like shattered glass under the light. The pouches shifted at her side, and he could almost hear the whispers of her dreams, the echoes of what could have been. Each pouch, a testament to her resilience, filled with trinkets of hope, yet heavy with the weight of their shared past. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly, the admission feeling like a confession of sins untold. "I was scared, Ella. Scared of what we were becoming, of the shadows creeping into our lives." "Shadows," she scoffed, anger lacing her voice. "You think shadows can hurt us? It's the light that blinds, Marcus. It's the light that reveals the truth we've been hiding from all along." The night deepened around them, the city alive with distant sirens and muffled conversations, but they were cocooned in their own world, a bubble of unresolved tension and heartbreak. The clock ticked somewhere, each second dragging like a heavy weight, reminding them of the fleeting nature of time. "I remember the way you used to wear that belt," she said suddenly, her voice softening, a flicker of warmth breaking through the ice. "It was ridiculous, but you wore it like a king. Like you had the world in your hands." A smile ghosted across his lips, a bittersweet reminder of a time before they were fractured. "You mean the one with the cartoon characters? I thought it was fashionable." "It was absurd, but you wore it with pride. I loved that about you." She paused, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You made me believe in magic, Marcus. But now everything feels like a ghost, haunting me." And in that moment, the silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating, holding their hearts in a vice grip. She tucked the locket away, a decision made but unspoken, while he tightened his grip on the belt, the worn leather a familiar comfort. The shadows danced around them, an audience to their pain, their love, and the confusion that bound them. Marcus took a step closer, heart racing, breath catching in his throat. "Ella, I want to be part of your story again, even if it's just a footnote. Let me help you carry your pouches, your burdens." The air thickened, a silence that crackled with intensity. She looked at him, and in her gaze, he saw the flicker of hope, the tiny flame daring to resist the approaching darkness. Maybe we can't rewrite the past, Marcus, but we can write something new." And as the shadows loomed, they stood on the precipice of something uncharted, their hearts pulsing in a rhythm that echoed like a heartbeat through the night. The city around them faded into a distant memory, and all that remained was the weight of their tangled lives, the accessories of their existence, jewelry, belts, pouches, each one a piece of their fractured souls, waiting to be sewn back together. In that space, they lingered, caught between what was and what could be, the tension crackling like electricity, ready to ignite. The frenzied heartbeat of the city thrummed beneath the ragged cries of a distant clock tower, its bells tolling the hour like a mournful reminder of time slipping away. A storm brewed in the air, thick with the scent of damp wool and the faint metallic tang of dyes gone wrong. Eleonora stood in the dim light of her workshop, her hands trembling as she gripped the fabric, a vibrant crimson that promised passion but whispered of blood. This was no ordinary day, it was the eve of the festival, where dreams would mingle with nightmares under the flickering lanterns. Outside, laughter erupted, a cruel contrast to the turmoil simmering within her heart. "I remember," she murmured, as shadows danced along the walls, their movements echoing the chaos brewing in her mind, "when I thought fabric was merely cloth." Thread coiled tightly around her fingers, the very essence of her being woven into every stitch. But now, it felt like a noose, tightening with each passing moment. The townsfolk would soon parade their finery, their threads spun from the very fabric of her soul, unaware of the sacrifice it demanded. How could they know? How could they fathom the agony that lay behind the seams? Across the narrow street, Jacob, the town's most renowned dyer, wrestled with his own demons. His workshop was a cacophony of color, bursting with an intensity that clawed at his insides. He mixed dyes like a mad alchemist, each hue flickering like a candle caught in a tempest. "This blue, this green," he growled to himself, voice low and edged with desperation as he poured a cauldron of indigo. It must be perfect. But perfection was a weight he could no longer bear. Shadows flickered in the corners of his mind, whispers of failure echoing louder than the joyous crowds outside. "I remember," he echoed, a chant of despair, "the first time I saw her work." Eleonora, with her bright eyes and reckless laughter, had sewn a tapestry of dreams that ensnared him. But now, their shared dreams felt like ghosts, slipping through his fingers like the very colors he tried to capture. It was a grotesque irony, really, he could manipulate the vividness of life into his creations, yet inside, he felt like a faded photograph, a memory lost to time. "Jacob," a voice called from the shadows, breaking his trance. It was Myra, a seamstress whose laughter sparkled like sunlight. She stood at the doorway, her presence a balm to his frayed nerves. "The festival is starting. People need you." But even her light couldn't reach the depths of his despair. "They don't need me," he spat, the words tasting like ash. "They need a facade." He waved his hand over the chaos of fabrics, the brilliant colors that sang yet felt hollow. "How can I give them what they want when I'm drowning in my own darkness?" Myra's eyes softened, understanding threading through her gaze. "You're more than just colors, Jacob. You're the heart of this place." She stepped closer, lifting a piece of fabric dyed in the richest emerald. "It's not just about trends or festival nights, it's about the stories we weave. Do you remember the boy with the torn cloak? You gave him hope." But hope felt like a distant echo, fading with every heartbeat. Meanwhile, Eleonora's needle flew, a blur of urgency as the clock ticked down with merciless precision. "I have to finish," she breathed, each stitch a prayer that the weight of her heart wouldn't spill out onto the fabric. "They'll see me. They'll know." But what would they know? That beneath the shimmering exterior lay a heart battered and bruised by the expectations of others? A knock rattled her door, a jarring interruption. "Eleonora?" It was Thomas, the town's mayor, with a voice that dripped with authority. "We need your dresses. They must shine tonight." "Shine," she muttered under her breath, the word tasting bitter. I'll be the brightest candle, but who will notice if the flame burns me? Thomas's impatience was palpable. The town depends on you. We all do. Do they? She snapped, the words laced with a raw edge of desperation. Do they know the cost of this fabric? Do they know what it means to be wreathed in beauty while inside you're fraying? He hesitated, the weight of her words hanging in the air. You have a gift, Eleonora. Use it. But what did it mean to wield a gift that felt like a curse? She felt the walls of her shop closing in, the colors pressing against her, demanding to be released, yet suffocating her spirit. As the festival's raucous laughter echoed through the streets, the tensions between duty and desire coiled tighter around both Jacob and Eleonora. They were artists but also prisoners of their talent. I remember, Eleonora whispered, almost to herself, when I wished to stitch joy into the world. Outside, the townsfolk donned their garments, oblivious to the turmoil brewing in the hearts of those who crafted their finery. They twirled and laughed, reveling in the vibrancy of the evening, blissfully unaware of the sacrifices made in the quiet corners of the workshops. Yet the storm was not just in the skies, it raged within the very souls of the artisans. Jacob clenched his fists, struggling against the tide of despair, while Eleonora fought to keep her heart from shattering under the weight of expectation. The time was near, and the threads of their fates were about to intertwine in a way neither could anticipate. The clock chimed once again, its ominous toll reverberating through the streets, a harbinger of the confrontation looming on the horizon. The air thickened, charged with unspoken words and unresolved emotions, drawing Eleonora and Jacob closer even as they tried to hold their distance. It was a moment suspended in time, a web of colors and shadows, and as the festival lights flickered to life, so too did the reckoning that awaited them both. Tonight, Eleonora thought, the fabric will tell our story. And in that moment, as the shimmering lanterns flickered against the darkening sky, the world outside awaited the unveiling of dreams, fragile, beautiful, and ultimately, hauntingly human. The clang of metal echoes through the night, sharp enough to cut the very silence that blankets the battlefield. I stand there, heart pounding, sweat mingling with dirt and blood, the weight of my armor so heavy it feels like a shroud. Each piece glints ominously in the pale moonlight, a cursed reflection of valor turned grotesque. My fingers tremble as they clutch the hilt of my sword, a flimsy symbol of strength, yet I feel like a marionette, strings pulled tight by fear and doubt. I remember the stories my father told, tales of knights who wore armor as skin, who danced in the field of honor like shadows at dusk. I remember the children's laughter as they marveled at the shimmering plates, how they believed the glint of steel was a beacon of hope. Oh, the irony! Here we are, drowning in the hollow echo of courage, where the glamour of armor is just a facade, a shimmering lie that fails to shield our hearts from the ghosts of regret. There's a flicker to my left, Alazia, her eyes fierce, a storm brewing beneath the calm surface. She's not just a warrior, she's a tempest, wild and unrelenting. But there's grief in her stance, a shadow draped across her spirit like a veil. Her armor, ornate yet battered, tells a tale of battles fought and lost, of dreams turned to ash. I can see the regret etched on the curve of her shoulder plates, the way they sag like the weight of unspoken words. We fight for honor, she whispers, but her voice wavers, as if she's convincing herself more than me. Honor. I scoff, a bitter laugh escaping my lips, the sound harsh and jarring against the backdrop of impending doom. Honor is just a shiny word for the grave we dig with our own hands. We're nothing but puppets in a masquerade. I feel my voice rise, a spark igniting the tension between us. The night is thick with unsaid things, and the air tastes of iron as we stand on the edge of chaos. But beneath our bravado lies the truth, the armor is a prison. Once, it might have represented nobility, a homage to ideals of chivalry that now feel absurd, like trying to breathe through a mask made of steel. Every clang, every scrape against the earth, is a reminder that we are trapped in this beautiful monstrosity, a fashion statement turned cruel joke. And then, from the shadows, Elias emerges, cloaked in darkness and desperation. He was once a brother, a confidant, but now he bears the scars of betrayal. The crest on his chest plate gleams defiantly, a taunt to the very honor he now questions. You think this armor makes us brave, he growls, voice raw, almost broken. It binds us, suffocates us. I can feel every lie pressing against my chest. I'm tired of pretending. He steps closer, the moon catching the edge of his helmet, illuminating the pain in his eyes. It's a facade that crumbles with each word, the bravado melting into vulnerability. Remember when we thought this was our salvation? When we believed that beneath this steel lay invincibility? His laughter is hollow, a sound that echoes like a death knell. Look at us now. Just three fools in a graveyard of dreams. I catch Alizia's gaze, the spark of fire now flickering into doubt. We can take it off, she ventures, a whisper laced with fear. What if we shed this skin of iron? What if we face the truth? The world is dark, but we can choose our own light. But trust is a fragile thread, easily severed. The air is thick with tension, each heartbeat feels like a countdown. I remember a time when we would have laughed at the absurdity of it all, when the weight of our armor felt like a badge of honor. Now, it feels like a tombstone, marking not valor but the graves of our lost selves. The battlefield stretches before us, a canvas painted in shades of despair and determination. Night creeps in, shadows dancing like specters, whispering secrets that chill the bones. I glance down at my armor, its cold embrace a reminder of the fight ahead. I can almost feel the metallic sheen mocking my very existence, telling me it's just a costume for the play of life, a tragicomedy where we are all actors in masks, hiding truths that are too raw to bear. Elias steps forward, his voice a low rumble. Let's make a choice. Stand behind the masks, or rip them off and face this together. We either fall as friends or become the very monsters we fear. A shudder runs through me, fear intertwining with a flicker of hope. I remember the night dreams danced in our heads, where chivalry was not just a word but a way of life. Yet here we are, teetering on the edge of despair, wondering if the very thing that was supposed to protect us has instead shackled us. I take a breath, heavy with the weight of choices, of unspoken words and unshed tears. Then together it is, I murmur. The silence wraps around us, thick and palpable as we stand on the precipice, the echo of our resolve a haunting melody in the darkness. Each heartbeat, each breath, binds us closer, a fragile thread woven into the fabric of our armor, and yet, beneath it all, our hearts thrum with a rebellious beat, demanding freedom from this cruel masquerade. The night thickens like a shroud, and the tension hangs in the air, electric and alive. We're at war, not just with the enemies before us, but with the very armor we wear, a fashion statement turned battle cry, a symbol of a chivalry that feels more like chains than wings. And as the first cries of battle pierce the night, I know this is just the beginning, a moment suspended in time, caught between the life we fought for and the death we fear. The confrontation waits ahead like a ghost, and we stand united, yet fractured, ready to face whatever darkness lies before us. The air was thick, suffocating almost, as the city trembled beneath a heatwave that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, relentless and oppressive. I could feel the asphalt beneath my feet radiating warmth, a reminder of the sun's merciless grip on the earth. Sweat trickled down my spine, a cold reminder of how fragile the human body is against nature's whims. A cacophony of sirens screamed in the distance, the frightened voices of pedestrians blending into a haunting chorus of desperation. It was a moment suspended in time, a snapshot of a world on the brink, where the fabric of society was fraying at the edges, echoing the very garments that clothed us, worn thin by the insatiable appetite of the climate. I remember Clara, her wide eyes glistening with hope as she flipped through the tattered pages of a fashion magazine. The glossy images danced in the flickering light of her cramped apartment, where the walls seemed to close in like a vice, echoing every sigh, every heartbeat. Look at these summer dresses, she said, her voice tinged with an urgency that made my skin prickle. So light, so breezy. Perfect for the heat. I watched her, a little smile creeping across my face, but inside, my heart sank. It was not just about fabric, it was about survival, about defiance against the elements that sought to consume us whole. Across the room, sprawled on the worn-out couch, was Jaden, a storm brewing behind his dark eyes, mirroring the brewing tempest outside. You think clothes can save us, he scoffed, his tone sharp enough to cut through the tension. The shadows flickered around him, a manifestation of his despair. Fashion is just a distraction. We're drowning, Clara. I knew he was right, yet there was something so intoxicating in her vision, something that made me want to forget the impending doom, even if just for a moment. I could feel the tug-of-war within me, a pulsing rhythm of despair and hope. Clara's laughter rang out, light and airy, but it felt like brittle glass shattering under pressure. "What if we use fashion to protest?" she proposed, her eyes alight with a fervor that sent chills down my spine. "What if we make a statement, show the world that we refuse to be defined by their expectations?" It was a moment that hung in the air, heavy with potential. I wanted to believe in that, to cling to it like a lifeline in a turbulent sea. But Jaden's skepticism loomed, a dark cloud threatening to rain on her parade. "No one cares about fashion when the world is burning down," he shot back, his voice low, almost a whisper, like the calm before the storm. I could see Clara's shoulders slump, the weight of her dreams crushing her spirit. "But we have to try," she whispered, her heart stitched into the very pattern she cherished, the vivid colors a defiance against the grayness that threatened to consume her. I felt a sudden surge of protectiveness. "What if we could create something from the ashes?" I suggested, the words spilling from my lips before I could stop them. "What if we could turn our despair into art?" In that moment, the air shifted. Clara's eyes glimmered, a spark ignited by the idea of rebirth from destruction. "A collection," she breathed, barely audibly, as if saying it too loudly would shatter the fragile hope that hung like a spider's web. "Fashion that embodies our struggle, our identity. The heat, the cold, the storms, everything we face." Jaden's brow furrowed, his skepticism morphing into a contemplative silence. "You think people will wear it?" he pondered, the conflict in his heart mirroring the storm clouds gathering outside. "You think they'll care enough?" The world outside felt like a ghost, a shadow of what it once was. The sirens wailed louder now, the echo of chaos and fear mingling with the desperate dreams that hung in the air between us. I could see Clara's vision unfold like a tapestry, vibrant and alive, yet tinged with the deep blues of melancholy. "We'll embrace the climate," she declared, her voice rising, trembling with emotion. "We'll celebrate the seasons that define us, the sweat that binds us. Every tear, every laugh, every heartbeat woven into our clothes." The words hung heavy, resonating, intertwining with my own heartbeat, each thud echoing the pulse of the earth itself. But as she spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between hope and despair. I remembered the shadows lurking just outside the window, the whispers of a world that refused to relent. It was a cycle, I realized, so deeply intertwined with the very fabric of existence. The seasons morphed, changed, reflected back to us our struggles, our desires, our humanity. The icy grip of winter would soon return, and I could already feel her biting breath upon my skin, a reminder of what was to come. "Let's do it," I found myself saying, the conviction rising from the depths of uncertainty. "Let's craft our rebellion, piece by piece, stitch by stitch. Let's not just survive the climate, let's confront it, head on." Clara beamed, her smile cutting through the darkness, while Jaden's silence shifted, there was something almost reverent in his gaze. And just like that, we became a trio bound by this fragile dream, an unlikely alliance in a world that felt like it was slipping through our fingers. The clock ticked on, relentlessly, spinning us into the future like a dance on the edge of a blade, razor-sharp and exhilarating. But as the silhouettes of our dreams flickered against the oppressive heat, I was haunted by the thought that every stitch we made would be a reminder of the climate changing around us, a constant cycle of loss and creation. It was a haunting dance, a rhythm of despair intertwined with fleeting hope, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down like the summer sun, leaving us gasping for breath, yet yearning for more. The city outside continued to pulse, every heartbeat synchronizing with our own. In that moment, as shadows stretched longer and the air grew heavy with possibility, I felt the echo of seasons past and the promise of seasons yet to come. And I knew, in the marrow of my bones, that this was just the beginning, the fabric of our rebellion stretching and warping in the heat of battle. The world was changing, but so were we. And as the night crept in, wrapping the city in its velvety embrace, I couldn't help but wonder if we were ready for the storm that was coming. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing through the makeshift tents of the village square. I remember the chill biting into my skin, a reminder that warmth was a privilege for the wealthy, while the rest of us huddled in rags, battling the elements as if they were our true enemies. But that day, the air crackled with anticipation, an electricity that felt both terrifying and intoxicating. Eyes darted around, shadows flitting like whispers. I was there, standing at the edge of a crowd, heart pounding, watching the threads of rebellion weave their way into our very souls. Meris stood beside me, her face a canvas painted by hardship, her skin stretched tight over the bones, eyes fierce, yet holding a flicker of something so fragile, so human. She lifted a hand, clutching her tattered shawl, the only remnant of her mother's love, an artifact from a time before the world became a bleak stage of suffering. "Today's the day, isn't it?" she murmured, her voice a fragile thread that threatened to snap under the weight of reality. I wanted to tell her that hope was as much a part of our existence as despair, but my words caught in my throat, tangled in the fear of being crushed beneath the heel of the oppressor. Across the square, Elias emerged from the shadows, a spectre of defiance with a heart as wild and untamed as the storm raging above us. His hair whipped in the wind, a wild manner echoing the chaos of our lives, eyes glinting with the fire of revolution. He was a dreamer, a boy who dared to believe that change was possible, even as the world around us crumbled like the walls of our homes, eaten away by neglect. "They think we'll cower," he shouted, voice piercing the air like thunder. "But we are the storm. We are the tide that will wash them away." He wore a shirt so frayed it was almost translucent, but it hung on him like a badge of honor, a testament to battles fought and losses endured. I remember how the crowd stirred, bodies pressing together like a heartbeat, a rhythm pulsing through the air. We were the collective breath of the oppressed, the unyielding spirit of the unseen. Yet, beneath the fervor, I felt the weight of their gazes, expectations, hopes, fears, all resting on our shoulders like a cloak of lead. Meris took my hand, and I could feel her pulse racing, each thrum a promise of solidarity, of defiance, of something that might shatter the chains binding us to our fate. But darkness hung like a shroud. The nobles watched from their gilded balconies, delicate fingers toying with jeweled goblets, laughter ringing out like a death knell. They wore silks that gleamed in the weak sunlight, colors so vibrant they could make the very earth we stood on weep with envy. Their world was a theater, and we were mere actors in a script written long before we even entered this life. And yet, in that moment, I felt something shift, an undercurrent of rebellion teetering on the edge of eruption. Meris's voice cut through my thoughts, laced with urgency. "What if they come for us? What if they—" Her words faltered as she cast a glance toward the looming castle, a fortress that felt more like a tomb than a sanctuary. The very stones echoed with the cries of those who had fallen before us. The echoes of their despair floated like ghosts, haunting me, reminding me that dreams could be as fragile as the cloth we wore, easily torn apart by the heavy hand of authority. Elias stepped closer, his breath warm against the chill, a flicker of warmth in the encroaching darkness. "They can't take our spirit. Not as long as we stand together. Not as long as we wear our scars like armor." His voice rose above the whispers, the tension in the air thickening until it felt like it might snap. "The world may see us as peasants, but our fashion tells a different story. Each stitch in our garments is a tale of survival. Each patch a symbol of our strength. Every tear a testament to our fight." I looked down at my own clothes, ragged and stained, yet I felt an inexplicable pride swell within me. A tapestry of struggle, of resilience. The fabric clung to my skin not just as a barrier against the cold, but as a declaration of who I was, a warrior of the forgotten. I remembered the laughter that had danced in my childhood, the times when we'd made our own beauty from the scraps discarded by those who believed themselves superior. We had turned misery into artistry, our clothes telling stories that would echo long after we were gone. The echoes of drums rolled through the air, a heartbeat of the gathering storm. I could feel it in my bones, the shift of power, the taste of rebellion sweet and bitter on my tongue. Meris's grip tightened, fingers intertwining with mine, grounding me as the world spun around us. The crowd surged forward, a mass of bodies moving as one, the rhythm of our collective defiance thrumming in our chests. We were not just peasants, we were a chorus of voices, a symphony of rage and hope, and as Elias led us forward, I felt the remnants of fear slip away, replaced by an unnerving exhilaration. The walls of the castle loomed before us, an impenetrable fortress, but behind those stone facades, I could almost hear the echoes of our ancestors, whispering, daring us to rise. Even as hesitation gnawed at the edges of my resolve, I felt the pull of something larger than ourselves. In that moment, I understood we were all stitched together in this tapestry of struggle, each thread a lifeline connecting us in our fight against the tide of oppression. The clock ticked mercilessly, a reminder that time was slipping away, but it could not drown out the roar of our souls rising in defiance. Together, I whispered, feeling the weight of those words. I looked at Maris, at Elias, at the swelling sea of faces around me, each one a flickering flame begging to ignite. Together? Their voices joined mine, a chorus of rebellion that thundered against the silence of oppression, a powerful declaration that echoed through the streets, shattering the night with our resolve. And as the shadows danced just outside the reach of the flickering torches, I knew we were no longer mere peasants in threadbare clothes, we were a revolution, woven together by the fabric of our shared struggles, ready to rise against the darkness, ready to claim our rightful place in the world. The clock on the wall ticks like a metronome, a steady reminder that time is slipping away. Tessa stands in front of the mirror, her heart pounding, each pulse a silent scream. The fabric clings to her skin, a bittersweet cocoon, whispering secrets of the past. She runs her fingers over the delicate embroidery, a reminder of the novels she had poured her soul into, the words that bled onto the pages, forming the very identity of her being. The dress glimmers in the dim light, a fusion of art and literature, yet it feels like a shroud, an echo of a life she once dreamed of. I can't do this, she whispers, voice trembling, the reflection staring back as if mocking her insecurities. What if they see through me? Across the room, Julian prowls like a restless spirit. His eyes, dark and brooding, capture the flickering candlelight, they burn with intensity and desperation. He clutches a worn copy of the picture of Dorian Gray, its edges frayed, pages yellowed with age. The words inside have haunted him, transformed him. You have to show them, he growls, voice low and rough, like gravel crushed underfoot. Fashion is a canvas, and we're the artists. This dress is our rebellion. Yet rebellion feels like a double-edged sword, doesn't it? In this world, they are mere shadows, yearning for the vibrancy of life, but tethered by the weight of expectations. Tessa feels the fraying at the edges of her mind, her thoughts twisted and tangled like the threads of her dress. She remembers the stories, the fierce heroines, the tragic heroes, the art that sparked revolutions. They were bold, unafraid to challenge the confines of their existence. Yet here she stands, a ghost haunting her own life, frozen in fear. A knock at the door. Heavy, foreboding, like a death knell. Tessa's stomach twists. What if they hate us, she asks, her voice barely above a whisper, cracking under the weight of possibility. Julian steps closer, his presence a storm brewing, his breath hot against her skin. They need to see us. The world needs to see us, he insists, passion igniting in his eyes. Art, literature, fashion, they are intertwined. The designs we create will echo through the ages. We will be part of history, Tessa. But the very thought terrifies her. History is a vast void, a wilderness filled with voices that have come and gone, leaving only whispers of their existence. She is afraid of becoming just another whisper, fading into silence. I remember, she says, her voice trembling, when we used to dream together. When our sketches were bold strokes against the canvas of life. But dreams, her voice breaks, they don't always manifest into reality. Julian's expression darkens, shadows dancing across his features. You're right. Dreams can turn into nightmares, he mutters, his hands flexing, fingers curling into fists. But the pain of inaction is far worse than the pain of failure. The tension thickens, wrapping around them like a noose. Tessa recalls the whispers of old, the poets who crafted their words into weapons, the painters who splattered their anguish across canvases, each brushstroke, each syllable a rebellion against the ordinary. They transformed their realities, bending the world to their will. But here, in this moment, she feels crushed beneath the weight of her own hesitation. I want to be bold, she admits, her voice trembling, but what if they see the cracks? What if they see the fear and the flaws? Flaws make us human, Julian replies, voice fierce, almost desperate. They make us relatable. It's the incomplete that intrigues. It's the imperfections that spark the fire. The great movements of art and fashion are born from pain, from struggle, from heartbreak. Tessa finishes, her heart heavy with memories of love lost and dreams shattered. She remembers the night spent under the stars, painting the universe in colors of hope, only to wake up to the grayness of reality. And still, they stand on the precipice, a thin line between fear and freedom. Outside, the city breathes, a cacophony of noise, a symphony of lives interwoven like threads in a tapestry. The fashion show looms ahead, a spotlight waiting to swallow them whole. Julian throws open the window, letting the cool night air flood the room, a breath of fresh possibilities. Look at the city. Each light is a story, each shadow a dream waiting to be realized. We are not just part of a show, we are part of a movement. The art we create tonight will ripple through time. It's our chance to leave a mark, to inspire others. But as the cool breeze brushes against her skin, she feels the chill of doubt creeping in. What if we're forgotten, she asks, voice barely a whisper, the fear curling around her heart like a dark vine. Then we'll be just like the ghosts in the books we love, he replies, his gaze steady, unwavering. But at least we'll have lived. At least we'll have dared to be seen. Tessa closes her eyes, feeling the weight of the world pressing against her chest. The memories flood her mind, the stories that shaped her, the art that ignited her spirit. She recalls the nights spent lost in the pages, the moments when words wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. I remember, she whispers, the first time I understood what beauty truly meant. It was in a painting, colors colliding and dancing like souls wrestling with their existence. Julian's gaze softens. And that beauty, Tessa, is what we bring. Our art, our fashion, will echo the emotions we've buried, the dreams we've chased. This night will be a canvas, a reflection of our souls. And with that, the air crackles. In that fleeting moment, Tessa realizes that the impact of literature and art on fashion trends is not just about fabric and design. It's about the heartbeat of humanity, the raw emotion that flows through every stitch, every brushstroke. It's about daring to confront the void, to embrace the fear and chase the dreams etched into the very fabric of existence. The clock continues to tick, but now it doesn't feel like a countdown. It feels like a heartbeat, a reminder that life is fleeting, yet beautiful, a chance to weave their stories into the tapestry of time. And as they step toward the door, a symphony of possibilities thunders in their hearts, echoing through the shadows of the city, ready to ignite the night. The clock struck midnight, its chilling chime reverberating through the cobblestone streets of a city caught between shadows and flickering lamplight. I stood there, breathless, the air thick with the weight of 1,000 untold stories. In the alleyway where the scent of wet stone mingled with the fading echoes of laughter, I could feel their presence, 3 figures, cloaked in the remnants of history, their garments whispering secrets passed down through centuries. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the electric anticipation that hung thick in the air, a tension as palpable as the ache in my heart. Elena, with her raven-black hair cascading like a midnight waterfall, stepped forward. Her eyes, stormy and wild, bore the remnants of a fierce spirit, battling against all that had been expected of her. The dress she wore, a flowing gown reminiscent of a noblewoman's attire from the 14th century, was stark and shocking against the modernity surrounding us. It clung to her in all the wrong places, emphasizing every curve, every flaw, a paradox of beauty and discomfort. She lifted her chin, defiance carved into the delicate lines of her face. "This isn't just cloth," she said, voice trembling yet fierce. "It's a shroud, a burden. It reminds me that history isn't just in books, it's alive, clawing at us, haunting us." And then there was Marcus, the brooding artist who saw the world through a lens smeared with melancholy. He wore a tunic that harked back to the medieval era, embroidered with intricate patterns that seemed to squirm under scrutiny. I could see the way his fingers trembled, itching to create, to paint the chaos swirling in his mind. "These clothes," he murmured, almost to himself, "they're like chains, or perhaps they're wings." His eyes darted to the shadows, and I could feel his heart pounding against his ribcage, a caged bird desperate to take flight but ensnared by the weight of expectation. I remember the moment when their eyes met, 2 souls spiraling in a tempest of longing and despair. I could sense the centuries folding around them, the past and present colliding like thunder. You think you can escape it? Elena's voice cut through the air, sharp as a dagger. This, she gestured at their vintage wardrobes, it's a costume party for ghosts. We're players in a tragic play, and I'm tired of being the damsel in distress. In that instant, I felt a pang of recognition, an echo of my own struggles. The weight of history pressed down on me, squeezing my chest like a vice. I too was haunted by the ghosts of those who came before, the shadows of their choices intertwining with my own, creating a tapestry of regret and ambition. I wanted to scream, to tear away the layers that bound me, to embrace my flawed self, but fear held me captive. The city pulsed around us, the distant sounds of revelry mingling with the cacophony of whispered fears. Somewhere, a clock chimed, marking the passage of time, each toll a reminder that we were all slaves to our own narratives, to the fabrics we wore, whether they were woven from silk or regret. I remember the first time I wore a corset, I said, my voice breaking the tension like glass shattering in a quiet room. It was a cruel joke, this beautiful prison. I thought it would transform me, but it only suffocated my spirit. Marcus turned to me, his gaze piercing, and I felt the gravity of his sorrow. And yet, here we are, dressed in the remnants of lives long past, he said. Maybe it's not about escaping. Maybe it's about finding a way to live with the ghosts. His words hung in the air, a haunting melody that reverberated through the stillness, beckoning us to confront the shadows lurking in the recesses of our hearts. The alley grew darker, the night deepening like a bruise. I could feel the weight of the past pressing in, the memories of medieval lives, of love and loss, of triumph and tragedy, entwining with our own. Each thread of fabric became a lifeline, tying us to those who had come before, women whose laughter echoed in taverns, men whose battles were fought with sword and shield, the everyday struggles and dreams of those who dared to stitch their own stories into the fabric of time. Elena's fingers brushed against the hem of her gown, and I watched as she closed her eyes, surrendering to the emotion swirling within. I remember the stories of my ancestors, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They taught me that fashion is not just about beauty, it's a rebellion, a declaration of identity. I am not just a woman in a dress. I am a lineage of warriors, of lovers. Her words ignited a fire in my heart, the raw truth of her struggle resonating deep within. And then, just as quickly, the fire flickered, a gust of wind ripping through our intimate moment. The shadows danced, teasing our resolve, reminding us that we were mere mortals bound by flesh and history. What if we are just playing dress-up in a world that doesn't care? Marcus interjected, his tone laced with bitterness. What if our choices are nothing more than echoes of their desires? The doubt clawed at me, a visceral fear that threatened to drag me down into the abyss of despair. But Elena's voice broke through, a beacon in the storm. Fear is a thief, she declared, her eyes blazing with conviction. Let us wear our history like armor, not chains. Let it tell our story, one that is powerful and raw. The intensity in her gaze ignited something within me, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness suffocating our dreams. As we stood together in that shadowed alley, time seemed to stretch, the fabric of our lives entwining with the stories of those who had walked before us. I felt the heartbeat of the city, the rhythm of its history resonating in my bones. I wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh. I felt the weight of the moment, the urgency of our existence pulsing like a drumbeat in the night. The tension coiled tightly, every breath charged with electricity, and I knew we were on the precipice of something monumental. The ghosts of the past lingered, whispering secrets in our ears, urging us to reclaim our narratives, to sew our destinies into the rich tapestry of life that lay before us. And as the clock chimed once more, marking the passage of time, I felt an exhilarating rush, a promise that our stories were not yet finished, that we still had the power to redefine what it meant to wear our history, to make it our own. In that moment, I understood, we were more than just echoes in the night. We were alive, fiery, and unyielding. And the world was watching.